There's a quiet contradiction hidden in the ancient world, something that doesn't quite belong, yet appears again and again. Structures that seem too deliberate, patterns that repeat across time, and knowledge that arrives long before it should. It doesn't feel random. It feels placed, as if these traces were never meant to explain themselves, only to endure. The more we examine them, the more the line between discovery and realization begins to blur. Because sometimes, it doesn't feel like we are uncovering the past at all. It feels like we are catching up to it. And that raises a question that lingers long after the evidence is gone. What if history is not something we've fully uncovered, but something that has been waiting for us to understand it? Beneath the quiet hills of southern Israel lies a hidden world carved entirely by human hands. The vast underground labyrinth known today as the Beit Guvrin underground cave complex, part of the ancient city of Maresha. From the surface, the landscape appears almost ordinary, a rolling expanse of pale limestone hills scattered with vegetation and archaeological ruins. Yet below this seemingly peaceful terrain stretches one of the most astonishing subterranean engineering achievements of the ancient world. Archaeologists have identified hundreds of artificial caves, forming a sprawling underground network that dates back more than 2,000 years. These spaces were not natural caverns shaped by geological forces. Instead, they were meticulously excavated by ancient inhabitants who carved deep into the soft chalk bedrock using relatively simple tools. What they created was an underground city of extraordinary scale. Enormous chambers, winding tunnels, hidden storage rooms, burial complexes, and vast quarry spaces that together reveal a level of planning, labor organization, and architectural understanding that still fascinates researchers today. The caves served many purposes throughout the centuries. Some functioned as quarries where limestone blocks were extracted for construction above ground. Others were used as storage facilities for oil, wine, and agricultural goods. Certain chambers were adapted as dovecotes, carefully carved with hundreds of small niches where pigeons could nest, providing both fertilizer and food for the inhabitants of Maresha. Still other passages appear to have formed defensive escape routes, narrow tunnels twisting through the bedrock that could allow residents to move unseen beneath the city during times of conflict. Over time, these spaces merged into a complex subterranean maze that reflects not a single construction project, but generations of excavation and expansion carried out by different cultures that inhabited the region, including the Edomites, Hellenistic settlers, Romans, and later Byzantine communities. Among the most visually striking features of the complex are the enormous bell-shaped caverns, some of which rise nearly 20 meters high. These chambers were excavated from the top down through small openings in the surface, gradually widening into vast interior spaces that resemble gigantic stone bells. Standing inside one of these chambers today, visitors often experience a profound sense of scale and symmetry. The smooth, curving walls taper elegantly toward the ceiling, and a single shaft of light falls from the circular opening above, illuminating the pale stone surfaces below. The precision of these forms raises intriguing questions. Without modern surveying equipment, how did ancient workers maintain such balanced proportions while carving downward into solid rock? How did they ensure that the ceilings would remain structurally stable while removing thousands of tons of stone? The bell caves suggest that their builders possessed an intuitive yet sophisticated understanding of rock stability and spatial geometry, even if the precise methods they used remain uncertain. Yet within this immense subterranean landscape, one discovery stands apart for its artistic beauty and archaeological significance: the Sidonian burial caves, where ancient wall paintings have survived for more than 2 millennia. These burial chambers, carved deep into the rock, contain some of the most remarkable frescoes ever found in an underground archaeological site in the region. When archaeologists first entered these tombs, they encountered something unexpected. Walls covered in vivid paintings depicting animals, mythological scenes, and symbolic imagery rendered in surprisingly bright colors. Despite the passing of centuries, the reds, blues, blacks, and ochres of the paintings remain visible, preserved by the stable underground environment of the caves. The scenes themselves are extraordinary. Exotic animals appear alongside mythological creatures and human figures, reflecting a mixture of cultural influences that once converged in this region during the Hellenistic period. Some of the imagery seems to echo Greek artistic traditions, while other elements hint at Eastern Mediterranean symbolism and local beliefs about death and the afterlife. The artistic quality of the Sidonian tomb paintings suggests that highly skilled artisans were involved in their creation. The lines are confident and expressive, the compositions carefully arranged across the walls and ceilings of the burial chambers. These were not crude decorations hastily applied to a tomb. Instead, they appear to have been carefully planned works of funerary art, intended to accompany the dead into eternity, while also expressing the cultural identity of the community that built them. Yet the true mystery lies in how such delicate artwork could survive in an underground environment for so long. Normally, pigments applied to limestone surfaces deteriorate over time due to moisture, bacterial activity, and mineral changes within the rock. In the Sidonian caves, however, the paintings endured. Some scholars believe the stability of temperature and humidity deep underground helped preserve the pigments. Others speculate that the ancient artists may have used particular mineral-based paints or binding agents that made the colors unusually durable. The exact composition of these pigments is still being studied, and the methods used by the painters remain only partially understood. Even more intriguing is the cultural question surrounding the tombs themselves. The name Sidonian suggests a connection to the ancient Phoenician city of Sidon, located along the Mediterranean coast in what is now Lebanon. Historical evidence indicates that merchants and settlers from Sidon may have lived in Meresha during the Hellenistic era, bringing with them artistic traditions and burial customs from the broader Mediterranean world. If this interpretation is correct, the paintings in the caves represent a rare fusion of cultures, a meeting point where Phoenician, Greek, and local traditions blended together within the quiet darkness of the underground tombs. In this sense, the Sidonian burial caves are not merely archaeological curiosities. They are windows into a multicultural society that flourished more than 2,000 years ago. The preservation of these paintings also raises technical questions about the construction of the tombs themselves. The chambers were carefully shaped to create relatively smooth surfaces suitable for painting. This required a level of control in carving the chalk limestone that is impressive even by modern archaeological standards. Workers had to remove rock while avoiding fractures that might damage the future artwork. Once the surfaces were prepared, artists applied the pigments in a way that allowed the colors to bond with the stone and remain visible across centuries. Each step of this process required knowledge and experience that is only partially understood today. Across the entire Beit Guvrin complex, the Sidonian tomb paintings stand as perhaps the most vivid reminder that this underground world was not merely functional. It was also cultural, artistic, and deeply symbolic. Beneath the ground, in spaces hidden from the sunlight of the ancient city above, people created art meant to endure beyond their lifetimes. The caves of Beit Guvrin therefore represent more than a network of excavated chambers. They reveal a society capable of engineering large subterranean spaces, organizing massive excavation efforts, and at the same time producing delicate works of art that continue to fascinate archaeologists and historians today. Even today, the story of Beit Guvrin has not been fully explained. Many areas of the cave network remain only partially explored, and each new discovery raises further questions. How did ancient people organize such massive excavation projects? And what tools did they use to create such large and well-balanced spaces? It is possible that many secrets are still hidden deep within the stone walls of this underground city, waiting to be revealed after more than 2,000 years. Where are you watching this video from? And what time of day is it for you? Share your location and time in the comments below. Hidden within the rocky hills of Bihar in northeastern India lies one of the most astonishing engineering mysteries of the ancient world: the Barabar Hill rock-cut caves. At first glance, they appear simple, silent chambers carved into a hillside of solid granite. But the deeper researchers look, the more perplexing the sight becomes. These caves are widely considered the oldest surviving rock-cut caves in India, dating back to the 3rd century BCE during the reign of the Mauryan emperor Ashoka. Inscriptions inside several chambers confirm that they were dedicated to the ascetic religious sect known as the Ajivika. Yet despite their historical attribution, the technological sophistication visible inside the caves continues to puzzle archaeologists, engineers, and historians. Surely the caves were not built with blocks or assembled structures. Instead, entire chambers were carved directly into extremely hard granite bedrock, a material so dense that even modern builders must use powerful tools to cut it efficiently. What makes Barabar truly extraordinary is not only that ancient craftsmen managed to excavate granite, but that they did so with an accuracy and finish that appears almost mechanical. The interior surfaces of the chambers are astonishingly smooth, forming precise curves and geometrical volumes that resemble modern architectural forms more than ancient hand-cut spaces. Many rooms consist of long rectangular halls that lead into perfectly rounded domed chambers, their shapes so symmetrical that they give the impression of deliberate geometric planning. Unlike many other ancient rock-cut structures, the walls inside these caves show very few irregularities or tool marks. Instead, the granite surfaces appear almost perfectly uniform, suggesting that the excavation process followed a carefully controlled method rather than crude chiseling. Perhaps the most famous feature of the Barabar caves is the remarkable surface finish known as the Mauryan mirror polish. The interior walls of the granite chambers were polished so finely that they can reflect light almost like a mirror. When a torch or beam of light is directed onto the stone, it glides across the surface with a sheen rarely seen in ancient stonework. This level of polishing is difficult even with modern abrasive equipment, yet these caves achieved it more than 2,000 years ago. Strangely, this highly advanced finishing technique appears to have been used only during the Mauryan period and then largely disappeared from later architecture. Even later rock-cut monuments in India, such as the great Buddhist cave complexes of Ajanta Caves and Ellora Caves, though much larger and more ornate, do not replicate the same mirror-like polish found in Barabar. This raises an intriguing historical question. If the technique existed, why was it not preserved or widely used afterward? Another fascinating aspect of the caves is their acoustic behavior. The highly polished granite surfaces and curved chambers create powerful echoes and reverberations. Even a quiet voice can resonate dramatically within the chambers, producing a deep, vibrating sound that fills the entire space. Some researchers believe this acoustic property may have been intentional, possibly designed to amplify chants or ritual recitations performed by the Ajivika ascetics who once occupied the caves. Others argue that the acoustic effect may simply be a byproduct of the geometry and polished surfaces rather than a deliberately engineered feature. Yet regardless of its origin, the phenomenon contributes to the strange atmosphere of the caves, where even small sounds can transform into booming echoes that seem to ripple through the stone itself. Despite these fascinating characteristics, the greatest mystery surrounding the Barabar Hill rock-cut caves lies in the question of how they were actually constructed. Granite is one of the hardest stones in the Earth's crust, significantly more difficult to carve than sandstone or limestone. Modern stoneworkers typically require steel tools, diamond-tipped drills, and mechanical grinders to shape granite efficiently. However, during the 3rd century BCE, the tools available to Mauryan craftsmen would have been primarily iron chisels and basic hammers. While iron tools can cut granite with enough labor, producing the extremely smooth and geometrically precise surfaces seen in Barabar would require an extraordinary level of control and endurance. One possibility is that workers used a slow grinding technique involving abrasive materials such as quartz sand combined with water and stone polishing tools. Over long periods, such abrasives could theoretically smooth the granite surface. Yet replicating the exact mirror-like polish seen in Barabar has proven extremely difficult, even for modern experimental archaeologists attempting to recreate the process. Another question concerns the initial excavation stage. Before polishing could begin, workers would have needed to remove enormous volumes of solid granite to create the chambers themselves. This process would have required not only durable tools, but also careful planning to maintain the symmetrical shapes of the rooms. The domed ceilings and smooth curves inside the caves suggest that the builders followed a precise architectural concept, perhaps marking out geometric guidelines on the stone before excavation began. However, no clear evidence has yet been found showing exactly how these guidelines were measured or maintained during the carving process. Some researchers speculate that a combination of fire setting, heating the rock, and then rapidly cooling it to fracture the surface might have been used to weaken the granite before chiseling. Others suggest that a large labor force working over many years could have slowly shaped the interior using repeated grinding and polishing techniques. Still, neither explanation fully accounts for the extraordinary uniformity and reflective finish that define the caves. Even more puzzling is the fact that this level of technical refinement appears suddenly in the historical record. The Barabar caves represent the earliest known example of such highly polished granite architecture in India, yet they already display a level of mastery that suggests the builders possessed well-developed methods. After the Mauryan period ended, however, the mirror-polished granite technique seems to vanish from large-scale architecture. Later cave complexes focused more on sculptural decoration and elaborate carvings rather than ultra-smooth surfaces. This abrupt disappearance adds to the mystery, hinting that the knowledge required to create such finishes may have been lost, forgotten, or simply abandoned as architectural traditions evolved. Because of these unanswered questions, the Barabar Hill rock-cut caves continue to fascinate engineers and historians alike. They stand as silent stone chambers carved into one of the hardest materials on Earth, polished to an almost impossible smoothness, and designed with a geometric precision that still challenges modern understanding. Whether the result of immense human labor, ingenious lost techniques, or a combination of both, the caves remain one of the most intriguing technological puzzles left behind by the ancient world. Even today, as researchers walk through the echoing granite halls and run their hands across the glass-like stone walls, they are confronted with the same question that has puzzled scholars for generations. How did ancient builders achieve such extraordinary craftsmanship using the limited tools of their time? What technique do you think ancient builders used to create the mirror-smooth granite walls inside the Barabar Hill rock-cut caves? Share your thoughts or theories in the comments below. Beneath the historic city of Istanbul lies one of the most remarkable underground structures of the ancient world, the mysterious Basilica Cistern. Built in the 6th century during the reign of Justinian I, this vast subterranean reservoir once supplied water to the imperial palace and surrounding districts of Constantinople. Hidden beneath the city for nearly 15 centuries, the cistern is far more than a simple water storage system. Its massive underground architecture, advanced hydraulic planning, and exceptionally durable construction materials reveal a level of engineering sophistication that continues to fascinate historians, archaeologists, and engineers today. The cistern occupies a cavernous rectangular chamber approximately 140 meters long and 70 meters wide. She's covering an area of nearly 10,000 square meters beneath the city. Its ceiling is supported by an orderly forest of 336 marble columns, arranged in 12 rows of 28 columns each, with every column rising roughly 9 meters from the water's surface to the vaulted ceiling above. The visual effect inside the structure is both haunting and magnificent. Dim light reflects across calm pools of water, while endless rows of stone pillars fade into shadow, creating the sensation of standing inside a submerged palace. But beyond its dramatic appearance, the technical challenges involved in constructing such a vast underground chamber in the 6th century remain remarkable. Engineers had to excavate an enormous volume of earth while ensuring the stability of the ground above, calculate how hundreds of heavy columns would distribute the weight of the massive vaulted roof, and design a structure capable of safely holding tens of thousands of cubic meters of water without collapsing or leaking. The cistern could store approximately 80,000 cubic meters of water, enough to supply large portions of the city during times of siege or drought. Achieving this capacity required an advanced understanding of hydraulic management and structural engineering that was far from simple for the technological conditions of the early Byzantine period. However, among all the remarkable aspects of the Basilica Cistern, perhaps the most astonishing and least fully understood is the sophisticated waterproofing technology used to construct and preserve the reservoir. The walls of the cistern are extraordinarily thick, measuring roughly 4 to 5 meters in some sections, and they were coated with a special waterproof mortar known historically as Horasan mortar. This material was produced by mixing lime with finely crushed brick and volcanic ash, creating a dense compound capable of sealing stone surfaces against water infiltration. What makes this mortar particularly mysterious is not simply its composition, but its incredible durability. For nearly 1,500 years, the walls of the Basilica Cistern have been in constant contact with water, yet the waterproof coating remains remarkably intact. Even after centuries of use, neglect, rediscovery, and restoration, the structure continues to hold water effectively without catastrophic leakage. Still, modern engineers studying ancient construction materials often point out that the performance of Horasan mortar in the cistern closely resembles the legendary durability of ancient Roman concrete, a material that has also resisted weathering and structural decay for millennia. Some researchers believe the secret lies in the chemical reactions that occur between lime and microscopic particles within the crushed brick, producing a form of hydraulic cement capable of strengthening over time when exposed to moisture. Yet despite modern chemical analysis, the precise manufacturing methods, proportions, and preparation techniques used by Byzantine builders remain uncertain. The remarkable longevity of the waterproof layers inside the Basilica Cistern raises important questions about whether ancient builders possessed specialized knowledge of materials science that has not been fully reconstructed today. In many ways, the cistern's walls behave almost like a living barrier against water, maintaining their integrity despite centuries of environmental stress, pressure changes, and geological movement. Equally impressive is the hydraulic system that once supplied the cistern with fresh water. The reservoir did not rely on local groundwater alone, but was connected to a vast network of aqueducts that transported water from distant sources far outside the city. One of the most important elements in this system was the famous Valens Aqueduct, a monumental structure that carried water across the landscape and into Constantinople through carefully calculated gradients. Engineers had to ensure that water flowed steadily across long distances using gravity alone, without pumps or mechanical assistance. Maintaining the correct slope along kilometers of channels required an extraordinary level of surveying precision for the time. If the slope was too steep, the water would rush uncontrollably and damage the channels. If it was too shallow, the flow would stagnate or stop entirely. The fact that such systems functioned reliably for centuries suggests a sophisticated understanding of terrain, fluid dynamics, and long-distance hydraulic planning. Once water reached the Basilica Cistern, it was stored safely beneath the city where it could remain cool, protected from evaporation, and shielded from potential contamination during times of conflict. Another intriguing feature of the cistern is the unusual diversity of the columns that support its ceiling. Many of these columns appear to have been taken from earlier Roman structures, temples, and monuments scattered across the empire. As a result, the columns are not identical in design. Some display Corinthian capitals, others Ionic elements, and many bear subtle decorative variations that suggest different origins. This practice of architectural recycling, known as spolia, was common in late antiquity. Yet the logistical challenge of transporting massive stone columns and installing them precisely inside a subterranean chamber remains significant. Engineers had to ensure that columns of varying design and dimensions could still support the enormous weight of the vaulted ceiling above. How the builders achieved structural uniformity using such diverse materials is still debated by historians of architecture. Perhaps the most famous and mysterious details within the Basilica Cistern are the two sculpted stone heads of Medusa that serve as column bases in one corner of the reservoir. These large carved blocks depict the mythological Gorgon Medusa, a figure from Greek mythology whose gaze was said to turn observers to stone. Strangely, the two heads are positioned differently. One is placed sideways while the other is set completely upside down. Scholars have proposed several theories to explain this unusual arrangement. Some believe the stones were simply reused from an earlier classical structure and positioned in whatever orientation allowed them to function as stable bases. Others argue that the Byzantine builders deliberately inverted the images in order to neutralize the mythological power associated with Medusa, symbolically removing her petrifying gaze. Yet no written record from the Byzantine period confirms the true reason for their placement, leaving the Medusa heads as one of the cistern's most enduring mysteries. Despite centuries of time and numerous earthquakes in Istanbul, the Basilica Cistern has remained largely intact. This suggests that Byzantine engineers may have designed the structure to absorb seismic stress, though the exact methods remain unclear. Its thick waterproof walls, evenly spaced columns, shakti, and strong vaulted ceiling likely helped maintain stability. Today, the cistern stands as a remarkable testament to the ingenuity of ancient engineers, demonstrating that the technological capabilities of the ancient world were often far more advanced than we once believed. What do you think is the real secret behind the almost perfect waterproofing of the Basilica Cistern? Simply ancient engineering skill? Or a material formula that modern science still hasn't fully understood? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Deep beneath the volcanic landscape of Cappadocia lies one of the most remarkable engineering achievements of the ancient world: the vast underground settlement known as Kaymakli Underground City. Carved directly into soft volcanic tuff beneath the modern town of Kaymakli. This complex was far more than a simple refuge. It functioned as a fully developed subterranean city designed to sustain human life below the surface. Archaeologists estimate that the system extends through at least 8 levels, reaching depths of around 40 meters underground, although only a few of these levels are accessible today. Within the explored sections, narrow corridors wind through the rock, connecting storage rooms, living spaces, kitchens, stables, and communal chambers. Every wall and passage was carved directly from the surrounding stone, meaning the builders had to plan the structure with extraordinary precision. Even a small mistake in direction could have caused tunnels to collide or sections to collapse. Yet the network was created with a level of spatial planning that still impresses researchers today. The origins of Kaymakli remain partially obscured by history. Many researchers believe that the earliest sections may have been created during the time of the Hittite civilization, perhaps as early as the 2nd millennium BCE, though the underground complex was clearly expanded and modified during later centuries. In particular, Byzantine Christian communities are known to have enlarged these underground spaces, using them as safe havens during periods of invasion and instability. However, while archaeological evidence provides some clues about who used the city and when, it still leaves open an important question. Who first conceived the idea of building such a vast underground refuge in the first place? The scale of the excavation alone would have required enormous labor and careful organization, suggesting a society capable of coordinated engineering projects long before the arrival of advanced machinery. Among the many remarkable aspects of Kaymakli, one feature stands out above all others: the astonishingly sophisticated ventilation system that made sustained life underground possible. Constructing chambers beneath the earth is relatively simple compared with the challenge of maintaining breathable air for hundreds, or possibly thousands, of inhabitants. Without a steady supply of oxygen and a means to remove stale air, smoke, and carbon dioxide, any underground settlement would quickly become uninhabitable. Yet the engineers who designed Kaymakli appear to have solved this problem with remarkable ingenuity. Throughout the complex, vertical shafts were carved upward through the rock, linking the deepest chambers to the surface above. Some of these shafts extend more than 50 meters from the lower levels to the open air. These channels functioned not only as ventilation ducts, but also as wells providing access to groundwater. Air could circulate naturally through the tunnels, drawn downward and upward through pressure differences between openings at various levels of the structure. The result was a passive ventilation system capable of maintaining breathable conditions throughout a vast underground labyrinth. What makes this system particularly mysterious is the precision required to construct it. Digging a vertical shaft from deep underground to the surface without modern surveying tools would have been extremely difficult. The builders had to determine both the correct direction and the correct location of the shaft, so that it emerged in a useful place above ground, while also connecting properly with the network of tunnels below. Even a small error in angle could cause the shaft to veer off course or miss the intended chamber entirely. Yet many of the ventilation wells in Kaymakli appear to be almost perfectly aligned, demonstrating a level of planning that suggests the builders understood complex spatial relationships within the rock mass. Some researchers have suggested that the shafts may have been started from the surface and excavated downward, but evidence from the structure of the tunnels indicates that many passages were carved from within the underground network itself. If this is true, it raises the fascinating possibility that ancient engineers were capable of mapping and navigating subterranean spaces with surprising accuracy. The ventilation shafts also played a crucial role in regulating temperature and humidity within the underground city. Because the surrounding rock maintains a relatively constant temperature year-round, the interior spaces of Kaymakli would have remained cool in the scorching summers of Anatolia and relatively warm during harsh winters. The airflow provided by the shafts helped prevent the buildup of moisture and smoke from cooking fires. This would have been especially important given the presence of kitchens, food preparation areas, and living quarters spread throughout the complex. In effect, the ventilation network transformed the underground chambers into a stable and livable environment, allowing entire communities to retreat beneath the earth for extended periods. Another remarkable feature of Kaymakli is the presence of massive circular stone doors designed to seal off passages in times of danger. These heavy stone discs, some weighing several hundred kilograms, were positioned within narrow corridors so they could be rolled into place to block access to deeper sections of the city. Each door included a small hole at its center, possibly used for observation or for attacking intruders with spears while remaining protected behind the barrier. The design of these defensive mechanisms reveals a deep understanding of both security and spatial control. Narrow tunnels prevented large groups of attackers from entering at once, while the stone doors could isolate different sections of the city, effectively transforming the underground maze into a fortified refuge. Equally fascinating is the internal layout of the settlement itself. The passages of Kaymakli do not follow a simple grid or linear plan. Instead, they form a maze-like arrangement of corridors and rooms, extending in multiple directions and at multiple levels. Some tunnels are deliberately narrow and low, forcing anyone passing through to stoop or move single file. This layout may have served both defensive and practical purposes. Residents familiar with the network could navigate it easily, while unfamiliar intruders would quickly become disoriented. The complexity of the design suggests that the builders had a clear concept of the city's overall organization, even though it was hidden entirely beneath the surface. Evidence discovered during excavations indicates that Kaymakli was not merely a temporary hiding place, but a fully functional underground community. Archaeologists have identified storage areas for grain and food supplies, large kitchens equipped with hearths, rooms believed to have been used for wine production, and stables where animals could be kept safely during times of siege. There are also spaces thought to have served as communal gathering areas or religious chambers. Such features imply that inhabitants could survive underground for extended periods, perhaps weeks or even months, without returning to the surface. The presence of carefully planned storage rooms and food preparation facilities suggests that the builders anticipated prolonged occupation and designed the city accordingly. Despite decades of archaeological study, Kaymakli continues to raise more questions than answers. The sheer scale of the excavation, the precision of its ventilation shafts, and the complexity of its defensive architecture all hint at a level of technical planning that is difficult to reconcile with the tools believed to have been available at the time. How did ancient engineers determine the optimal locations for ventilation wells that would supply sufficient airflow to the deepest chambers? How were these shafts aligned so accurately from such depths? And perhaps most intriguingly, how did the builders visualize the layout of a vast underground network before it existed? Even today, with modern mapping technologies, planning a subterranean complex of comparable size would require detailed geological surveys and precise engineering calculations. The underground cities of Cappadocia, including Kaymakli and Derinkuyu, show how ancient communities adapted their environment for survival. Among their most impressive achievements is Kaymakli's sophisticated ventilation system, which made long-term life underground possible. Without it, the city would have been little more than a network of suffocating tunnels. Instead, it became a functioning refuge capable of sustaining human life beneath the earth. Even today, Kaymakli remains both an archaeological treasure and a mystery, as its remarkable engineering continues to challenge our understanding of ancient technology. What do you think? How did ancient builders manage to design a ventilation system capable of supplying fresh air to an entire underground city like Kaymakli? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Hidden high in the Andes Mountains of northern Peru lies one of the most enigmatic underground architectural systems ever created in the ancient world: the subterranean gallery network of Chavin de Huantar. Built more than 3,000 years ago by the mysterious Chavin civilization, this ceremonial center sits at an altitude of over 3,000 meters, surrounded by steep valleys and powerful rivers that carve through the mountains. At first glance, the temple complex above ground appears impressive, but relatively modest compared to later monumental sites of the Andes. Yet beneath the stone platforms and pyramidal structures lies an astonishing labyrinth of narrow corridors, hidden chambers, ventilation shafts, and water channels carved deep into solid rock. Archaeologists have discovered dozens of interconnected underground galleries that twist through the foundation of the temple complex, like the veins of some enormous stone organism. These passages are dark, silent, and disorienting, often only wide enough for a single person to pass through, and they frequently bend at sharp angles or descend deeper into the mountain. What makes the system so extraordinary is not merely its scale, but the level of planning required to construct it. The layout does not appear random. Many corridors intersect with remarkable geometric precision, and certain chambers seem carefully positioned relative to the structure above. This suggests that the builders possessed a sophisticated architectural vision and may have planned much of the underground network before excavation even began. Yet the deeper researchers look into this labyrinth, the more puzzling the technological achievements of its creators appear. Among the most striking mysteries is the astonishing precision with which the stone itself was cut and shaped. Many of the underground passages were carved directly into extremely hard bedrock, including granite and andesite, materials that even modern construction crews treat with respect due to their density and durability. The walls of the galleries often appear surprisingly smooth and regular, with surfaces that show controlled shaping rather than crude excavation. Corners are frequently sharp and deliberate, while certain passageways maintain consistent widths and angles over long distances. In places where blocks of stone were used to line or reinforce sections of the corridors, The masonry is fitted so tightly that the joints between stones are almost invisible. This level of precision raises one of the most troubling questions about the technology of the Chavin builders. During the period when the temple complex was constructed, the civilization did not possess iron or steel tools. Metalworking in the Andes was still in its early stages, and most available tools would have been made from stone, bone, wood, or relatively soft metals such as copper. None of these materials should have been capable of producing the kind of controlled stone cutting visible in certain sections of the galleries. Archaeologists have proposed that hammerstones made from extremely hard rocks could have been used to gradually chip away the bedrock over long periods of time. However, when researchers examine some of the smoother surfaces and straight edges in the underground passages, the explanation becomes less convincing. The regularity of certain cuts suggests deliberate shaping rather than simple repetitive impact. Some corridors appear to have been carved with remarkable uniformity, as if the builders were following precise measurements throughout the excavation. The question therefore remains deeply unsettling. How did a culture with such limited technological tools achieve this level of stoneworking inside narrow underground spaces? Equally mysterious is the way the underground network integrates with the natural forces of water and sound. Hidden beneath the floors of the temple complex runs a sophisticated system of stone-lined channels designed to redirect water flowing from nearby rivers and seasonal rains. These channels pass through the foundations and sometimes beneath the galleries themselves. During periods of heavy flow, water rushing through the system can produce powerful echoes that resonate through the underground chambers. Modern researchers who have studied the acoustics of the galleries have discovered that certain passages amplify sound in unusual ways. Voices can carry unexpectedly far, while the roar of water moving through the channels can create deep, rumbling vibrations that travel through the stone corridors. It is possible that these acoustic effects were deliberately engineered to enhance religious ceremonies conducted inside the dark galleries. Imagine entering the underground labyrinth during an ancient ritual, guided only by torchlight, surrounded by carved stone walls whose origins you cannot see. As priests chant or blow conch-shell trumpets, the sound would reverberate through the maze of corridors, while distant water thundered beneath the floor like the voice of a hidden force within the mountain. Such sensory experiences could easily have reinforced the spiritual authority of the temple and the priests who controlled access to its hidden spaces. At the center of this subterranean maze lies one of the most iconic objects of the Chavin world, the Lanzon monolith, a towering monolithic sculpture carved from a single block of stone and placed deep within a special gallery chamber. The figure depicts a powerful supernatural being with human and animal features, including jaguar fangs and serpentine hair. Remarkably, the statue stands exactly within the core of the temple's underground architecture, as though the entire labyrinth was designed around its presence. Narrow passages lead toward this chamber from multiple directions, suggesting that the sculpture formed the spiritual axis of the entire complex. Pilgrims may have traveled long distances to reach Chavin de Huantar, only to be led through twisting underground corridors before finally encountering the towering stone deity hidden in the darkness. Even here, the technological puzzle persists. The lanzon itself is carved with intricate detail, yet transporting and positioning such a massive monolith within the narrow underground galleries would have required extraordinary planning and coordination. Another aspect of the underground system that continues to intrigue researchers is its ventilation and structural stability. Despite the depth of the galleries, many chambers maintain breathable air, suggesting the presence of subtle airflow channels built into the architecture. Small vertical shafts connect certain sections of the labyrinth to the surface, allowing air to circulate through the corridors. At the same time, the structural design of the galleries appears remarkably resilient. Over thousands of years, the temple complex has endured earthquakes, floods, and landslides common to the Andean region, yet much of the underground system remains intact. This durability implies that the builders understood how to distribute weight and stress through the surrounding stone, even though they lacked the formal engineering knowledge that modern architects rely upon. Taken together, the underground galleries of Chavin de Huantar reveal a level of architectural and technological sophistication that is astonishing for such an ancient site. The complex labyrinth of corridors, the integration of water channels and acoustic effects, the precise placement of sacred sculptures, and especially the remarkably accurate cutting of hard stone deep underground, all suggest a culture possessing knowledge that researchers still struggle to fully explain. Even after more than 3,000 years, the silent corridors beneath Chavin de Huantar continue to challenge modern assumptions about what early civilizations were truly capable of achieving. In your opinion, how were the ancient Chavin people able to cut and shape extremely hard stone with such astonishing precision when they had almost no advanced metal tools? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Beneath the famous limestone hill of the Acropolis in Athens, best known to the world for the Parthenon and the monumental temples of classical Greece, lies a far less visible but equally fascinating engineering achievement: a network of ancient underground cisterns carved directly into the bedrock. These subterranean reservoirs formed a crucial part of the Acropolis's survival system, quietly sustaining life atop the fortified hill for centuries. While visitors today admire the marble columns and open plazas above, few realize that deep below the surface exists a hidden hydraulic infrastructure designed to solve one of the most difficult problems any hilltop fortress faces: how to secure a reliable supply of water. The Acropolis rises roughly 150 meters above sea level and is composed largely of hard limestone, a geological formation that offers almost no natural springs. For the inhabitants and defenders of the citadel, especially during times of siege, this posed a potentially fatal challenge. Without water, even the strongest fortification could fall within days. To overcome this limitation, ancient engineers created an ingenious system that collected rainfall from the rocky plateau and stored it safely underground in carefully constructed cisterns. Rainwater falling on the surface of the Acropolis did not simply run off the rock. Instead, it was deliberately channeled through small stone-cut grooves, drainage openings, and sloping surfaces that directed the water into hidden shafts and tunnels. From there, it flowed downward into large underground chambers designed specifically to function as reservoirs. And these cisterns varied in size, but many were capable of storing thousands, sometimes tens of thousands, of liters of water, enough to sustain a significant population for extended periods during a blockade. The chambers themselves were carved directly into the limestone bedrock, creating hollow spaces beneath the citadel that remain remarkably intact today. Archaeologists who have examined these structures have been struck by the precision of their construction. The interior walls are often smooth and evenly cut, the ceilings shaped into stable arches or vaults that distribute pressure from the earth above, and the channels leading into the reservoirs maintain a carefully calculated slope that allows water to flow naturally without erosion or stagnation. Achieving this level of control in a dark subterranean environment would have required a sophisticated understanding of geometry, measurement, and stoneworking techniques. Yet among all the technical aspects of the Acropolis cistern system, perhaps the most astonishing feature is the technology used to make these reservoirs waterproof. Simply carving a chamber into limestone would not be enough to hold water for long periods. Without protection, water would slowly seep into the porous rock, weakening the structure and draining the reservoir. To prevent this, ancient builders coated the interior surfaces of the cisterns with a specialized waterproof plaster. This material, often compared to the Roman hydraulic mortar known as opus signum, consisted of a carefully blended mixture of lime, sand, mud, and crushed ceramic fragments such as broken pottery or brick. When applied to the stone walls and allowed to cure, the mixture created a dense, durable surface capable of sealing microscopic cracks and preventing leakage. What makes this technology so remarkable is its longevity. In several of the Acropolis cisterns, traces of this waterproof coating have survived for more than 2,000 years, still clinging firmly to the stone and retaining its water-resistant properties. Even modern engineers studying ancient hydraulic systems have expressed admiration for the durability of these mixtures, which appear to resist moisture, mineral buildup, and erosion far better than many modern mortars. The precise composition of the plaster remains a subject of ongoing research. While scholars understand the basic ingredients, lime combined with finely crushed ceramics, the exact proportions and preparation techniques used by ancient craftsmen are still debated. Some studies suggest that the ceramic particles reacted chemically with the lime to create a hydraulic compound capable of hardening even in damp environments. Others believe that the mixture's effectiveness came from careful layering, where multiple coats of plaster were applied and polished to create an extremely dense barrier. There is also evidence that the surfaces were sometimes burnished or compacted to reduce porosity further. Whatever the method, the result was a remarkably reliable waterproof lining that allowed the cisterns to retain stored rainwater for long periods without significant loss. Considering that these coatings were produced with ancient tools and materials, the sophistication of the process is striking. Another intriguing aspect of the underground system is the presence of narrow tunnels connecting some of the reservoirs. These passages may have served several functions: maintenance access for cleaning sediment from the cisterns, controlled movement of water between chambers, or possibly even emergency escape routes during times of conflict. Some tunnels are extremely tight, suggesting they were designed primarily for technicians or workers rather than for regular traffic. Others are wider and show signs of later modifications, indicating that the network evolved over many centuries. Indeed, the Acropolis cistern system was not constructed all at once. And evidence suggests that parts of it may date back to the Mycenaean period, more than 3,000 years ago, when the Acropolis already functioned as a fortified stronghold. Additional reservoirs and channels were likely added during the classical Greek era and later expanded again in Byzantine times. The result is a layered underground architecture reflecting multiple civilizations adapting and improving the same essential infrastructure. Despite decades of archaeological investigation, many aspects of the system remain uncertain. Large portions of the subterranean network are difficult to access and may still lie undiscovered beneath later construction. Scholars continue to debate how ancient builders were able to maintain such accurate gradients in their water channels when working underground, where visual reference points would have been limited. The methods used to measure distances, angles, and slopes inside dark rock chambers are not fully understood. Equally puzzling is the logistical challenge of carving large storage rooms within the dense limestone, while maintaining structural stability for the sacred buildings standing above. Yet perhaps the most enduring mystery remains the waterproofing technology itself. How did ancient craftsmen develop a plaster mixture capable of surviving for millennia? What experimentation or accumulated knowledge led them to such an effective formula? And how widespread was this technology across the Greek world? Today, the Acropolis underground cisterns stand as quiet evidence of a hidden layer of ancient engineering beneath one of the world's most famous archaeological sites. While the temples above represent the artistic brilliance of classical Greece, the reservoirs below reveal the practical ingenuity that helped those civilizations survive. Carved into stone and sealed with a remarkably durable waterproof coating, these cisterns show that ancient cities relied not only on monumental architecture, but also on advanced technologies concealed beneath the surface. Knowledge that still raises questions even after thousands of years. If ancient builders were able to create waterproof coatings that could survive for more than 2,000 years deep underground, what do you think their true level of engineering knowledge really was? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Hidden deep within the rugged mountains of southwestern Colombia lies one of the most unusual underground archaeological sites ever discovered in the Americas, the Tierradentro underground tomb complex. At first glance, the landscape appears quiet and unremarkable, covered in rolling green hills and mist drifting through the Andean valleys. Yet beneath this peaceful terrain exists a vast network of ancient burial chambers carved directly into the earth by a civilization that vanished long before written history reached the region. Known as Hypogea, these subterranean tombs were constructed by a pre-Columbian culture between approximately the 6th and 9th centuries CE. What archaeologists discovered here was not a simple burial ground, but a carefully engineered underground world consisting of deep vertical shafts, spiral staircases, spacious ceremonial chambers, carved columns, and walls covered with geometric paintings. The complexity of the site raises a profound question that still lingers today. How did an ancient society with seemingly limited technology create such sophisticated structures hidden entirely beneath the ground? The first explorers who descended into the tombs were immediately struck by the unusual design. Each hypogeum begins with a narrow vertical entrance shaft cut into the ground, often reaching depths of 4 to 9 meters. From this opening, a spiral staircase winds downward toward the main burial chamber. These staircases are not built using stacked stones or masonry blocks. Instead, every step was carved directly into the bedrock itself. The steps maintain surprisingly consistent proportions, suggesting that the builders followed a deliberate architectural plan rather than improvising during excavation. At the bottom of the staircase lies a circular or oval chamber large enough to contain multiple burial niches. Many of these rooms contain carved stone columns rising from the floor to the ceiling, supporting the structure above. Yet these columns were not added later. They were intentionally left standing as the surrounding rock was carefully removed, meaning the builders had to plan the internal layout of the tomb before they even began carving. A single mistake could have weakened the roof and caused the entire chamber to collapse. The precision required for such planning is astonishing when considering that the excavation was carried out entirely underground. Even more remarkable are the painted decorations that cover the interior walls, ceilings, and columns of many chambers. Using red, black, and white pigments, the ancient artists created intricate geometric patterns, including zigzags, spirals, diamonds, and symmetrical bands that wrap around the interior surfaces. Some chambers also display stylized human figures and symbolic motifs believed to have ritual meaning. What makes these paintings extraordinary is their symmetry and balance. The patterns often repeat with consistent spacing, forming complex compositions that appear carefully measured. Yet these works were created in spaces that receive no natural light. To paint such detailed designs in complete darkness would have required controlled lighting, steady surfaces, and a clear visual plan. Archaeologists still debate how the artists managed to maintain such accuracy while working deep underground with only primitive illumination. However, the greatest mystery surrounding Tierradentro does not lie in its art or its ceremonial purpose, but in the technology used to create the tombs themselves. The entire complex was carved directly into layers of volcanic rock that form the hills of the region. Although this rock is softer than granite, excavating large underground chambers several meters below the surface remains an extremely demanding task. The builders had to remove massive amounts of material while ensuring that the walls and ceilings remained structurally stable. This raises a series of questions that archaeologists have struggled to answer for decades. How did the ancient engineers determine the exact depth and shape of each chamber before excavation began? When carving downward from the surface, they could not see the final layout of the chamber until the excavation was nearly complete. A small miscalculation in angle or thickness could have destroyed the structure. Yet many of the chambers display smooth walls, evenly curved ceilings, and carefully positioned support columns that suggest the builders understood the geometry of the underground space long before it was fully carved. Equally puzzling is the question of the tools used for excavation. The Tierradentro culture left behind relatively few metal artifacts, and there is little evidence that they possessed advanced metal cutting technology. Most archaeologists believe that the tombs were excavated using stone tools made from harder volcanic rock. If this is correct, the process must have required an extraordinary amount of time and labor. Carving a staircase and chamber several meters deep using only stone tools would have taken thousands of hours of careful work. Yet the scale of the site suggests that dozens, perhaps hundreds, of such tombs were created over generations. The amount of excavated material alone would have been enormous. Workers would have needed a system for hauling debris out of the shaft while continuing to carve deeper into the ground. No clear archaeological evidence has yet revealed how this process was organized. Another engineering challenge involves ventilation and lighting. Excavating deep underground spaces quickly creates problems with air circulation and visibility. Without adequate ventilation, dust and smoke from torches could accumulate, making the environment hazardous. Nevertheless, the tombs show little sign of chaotic excavation. The walls are relatively smooth, and the architectural features appear deliberate rather than accidental. This implies that the builders had a method for working in confined subterranean conditions for extended periods. Some researchers speculate that temporary ventilation shafts or controlled torch systems may have been used, but no definitive proof has been found. The careful placement of columns inside several tombs introduces yet another layer of complexity. When carving a chamber from solid rock, leaving behind structural supports requires an accurate understanding of the load distribution above. If too much rock is removed, the ceiling may collapse. If too much is left in place, the interior space becomes cramped and impractical. The Tierradentro builders seem to have achieved a balance between these extremes. The columns often stand at symmetrical positions within the chamber, suggesting that the builders planned both the decorative and structural aspects simultaneously. This indicates a level of architectural foresight that is difficult to reconcile with the limited technological evidence available. Despite decades of archaeological study, many aspects of the site remain uncertain, including the identity of the people who built it. The Tierradentro culture left no known written records, and much of what we know about them comes from pottery, stone statues, and burial goods found within the tombs. These artifacts suggest a complex society with strong ritual traditions and hierarchical leadership. The elaborate tombs may have served as burial places for elite individuals or spiritual leaders, reflecting beliefs about the afterlife that required the construction of symbolic underground spaces resembling ceremonial houses. Yet, without written testimony, the motivations behind the architecture remain speculative. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of Tierradentro is how little trace this civilization left behind. By the time Spanish explorers arrived in the region in the 16th century, the culture responsible for the hypogea had already disappeared or transformed beyond recognition. The tombs remained hidden beneath the hills for centuries, their painted walls preserved in darkness, while the identity of their creators faded from memory. Today, archaeologists continue to study the site, attempting to reconstruct the techniques and knowledge that allowed ancient builders to sculpt an entire funerary landscape beneath the earth. What remains undeniable is the remarkable skill required to create these underground chambers. The spiral staircases, symmetrical columns, painted interiors, and carefully shaped rooms all suggest a culture with a sophisticated understanding of engineering and spatial design. Yet the exact methods used, especially the techniques for carving deep, stable chambers into volcanic rock with limited tools, remain unknown. Today, as archaeologists descend these silent staircases, one question still echoes through the darkness. How did an ancient civilization achieve such precise underground construction? In your opinion, what techniques might the ancient Tierradentro people have used to carve such deep and precise tomb chambers into volcanic rock? Share your thoughts or theories in the comments below. Hidden beneath the quiet countryside of northern France lies a place that few people would expect to exist at all. A vast underground labyrinth known as Naours' underground city. From the surface, the landscape appears ordinary. Gentle fields, small villages, and rolling farmland typical of the Picardy region. But more than 30 meters below the ground stretches a hidden world carved directly into soft chalk bedrock, a subterranean network of tunnels and chambers so extensive that many researchers describe it not simply as a cave system, but as an entire underground settlement. Today, archaeologists know that the complex contains roughly 300 interconnected rooms linked by long corridors, storage chambers, gathering spaces, and narrow passageways that wind through the bedrock like the streets of a buried village. Yet despite decades of research, the true origins of this remarkable place remain uncertain. And the biggest mystery surrounding Naours is not merely how it was used, but who first built it. The tunnels of Naours were cut directly into chalk, a type of rock that is softer than granite, but still extremely demanding to excavate on a large scale. Creating hundreds of chambers and long galleries would have required removing enormous volumes of rock by hand. When visitors walk through the underground corridors today, they can still see the marks of chisels carved into the walls and ceilings, silent evidence of the tools that shaped this hidden world centuries ago. These marks suggest that the builders relied on simple iron tools such as picks, hammers, and chisels. However, what surprises many researchers is the consistency and organization of the excavation. The corridors are relatively straight and evenly proportioned. The ceilings are smoothly curved to prevent collapse, and the chambers often have remarkably uniform dimensions. Such structural stability indicates that the builders possessed an intuitive understanding of the properties of chalk and the mechanics of underground construction, even though they lived long before the development of modern geology or engineering. Equally impressive is the layout of the underground city itself. Naours was not carved randomly. It was clearly planned as a functional space capable of supporting large numbers of people for extended periods of time. Some chambers appear to have been sleeping areas, while others served as storage rooms for food and supplies. There are also spaces believed to have been used for keeping livestock, as well as areas that may have functioned as communal gathering places or chapels. Narrow stairways once connected the underground world to the surface, allowing people to enter quickly while keeping the entrances small and easily defensible. This arrangement has led many historians to conclude that Naours was used as a refuge during times of danger. In medieval Europe, villages often faced sudden raids, warfare, or bandit attacks, and an underground shelter capable of hiding entire communities would have been an invaluable defensive resource. Another remarkable feature of Naours is its natural ventilation system. Deep underground environments typically suffer from stagnant air, yet the tunnels of Naours remain surprisingly breathable. Archaeologists discovered that vertical shafts were carefully carved upward from certain parts of the complex to the surface, allowing fresh air to circulate throughout the chambers. These ventilation shafts appear to have been positioned strategically, suggesting that the builders understood how air could move through confined spaces. Even today, the temperature inside the underground city remains relatively constant throughout the year, hovering around 10 degrees Celsius regardless of the season above ground. This stable climate would have made the tunnels ideal for storing food and preserving supplies during long periods of shelter. Despite these impressive engineering features, one practical question still puzzles researchers. What happened to the enormous amount of rock that had to be removed during construction? Excavating hundreds of chambers would have produced thousands of tons of chalk debris. Some archaeologists believe the extracted chalk may have been used as building material for structures on the surface, while others think it could have been gradually transported away over many generations of expansion. The absence of clear historical records describing the excavation process makes it difficult to determine exactly how long the construction of Naours took, or how many people were involved. The underground city gained renewed attention during the early 20th century, particularly during the First World War. The region of Picardy became one of the main fronts of the conflict, and soldiers stationed nearby discovered the strange network of tunnels beneath the village of Naours. Many soldiers explored the underground passages and left behind thousands of inscriptions carved into the walls. Names, military units, hometowns, and dates. These carvings, some of which have survived for more than a century, provide a fascinating human record of soldiers from Britain, Australia, Canada, and the United States who passed through the region. Modern historians have even used these inscriptions to identify individual soldiers and trace their wartime movements. Yet even with all this documentation from the modern era, the deeper past of Naours remains frustratingly obscure. The greatest mystery surrounding the underground city concerns its earliest builders. Many historians once believed that the tunnels were created entirely during the Middle Ages as emergency shelters for nearby villages. However, some archaeological evidence suggests that parts of the complex may be significantly older. Certain sections appear to have been expanded or modified over time, indicating that the site may have evolved across several historical periods. This raises the possibility that the first tunnels could date back far earlier than medieval Europe. Some researchers have proposed that the origins of Naours may lie in ancient quarrying activity. The chalk beneath the region was widely used as construction material, and early quarry workers might have begun excavating underground spaces that were later adapted into shelters. Others speculate that the earliest chambers could date back to the Roman era, when the region was part of the Roman province of Gaul. If this theory is correct, the underground city may have begun as a Roman excavation site before being transformed into a refuge centuries later. However, definitive proof for any single theory remains elusive. Archaeological layers within the tunnels are difficult to interpret because the site was reused and modified repeatedly across many generations. Tools, pottery fragments, and other artifacts found within the chambers often belong to later historical periods, making it difficult to determine the original construction phase. As a result, the identity of the first builders remains one of the most intriguing unanswered questions surrounding Naours' underground city. This uncertainty gives the underground labyrinth a unique sense of historical depth. The tunnels we see today may represent the combined work of multiple civilizations separated by centuries. Each generation could have expanded the system slightly, digging new rooms, reinforcing old passages, and adapting the space to meet changing needs. Over time, the underground network may have grown gradually into the enormous complex that exists today. Standing inside the silent corridors of Naours, it is easy to imagine the countless people who once passed through these chambers. Villagers seeking refuge during violent conflicts, medieval families hiding from invading armies, and later soldiers exploring the mysterious tunnels during wartime. Yet behind all these stories remains the deeper question that still fascinates archaeologists and historians alike. Who were the first people to carve into this chalk bedrock and begin creating the hidden city beneath the fields of northern France? Without written records or definitive archaeological evidence, the origin of Naours remains an open mystery, a reminder that even in well-studied regions of Europe, the past can still conceal secrets buried deep beneath the earth. Who do you think were the true first builders of the Naours underground city? Ancient Romans, early quarry workers, or an even older mysterious community? Share your theory and thoughts in the comments below. High in the rugged hills of the Western Ghats, in the Indian state of Kerala, lies a mysterious archaeological site known as the Edakkal Caves, a place where ancient human expression was carved directly into stone thousands of years ago. Unlike most caves that form naturally through water erosion or limestone dissolution, Edakkal is something far stranger. The structure is not a conventional cave at all, but rather a massive natural rock chamber, created when an enormous slab of stone became wedged between two giant boulders on the mountainside. The result is a towering fissure that resembles a hidden stone room suspended within the mountain itself. Standing more than 1,000 meters above sea level, the chamber is accessible only by climbing steep terrain, raising immediate questions about why ancient people repeatedly traveled to such a remote location. Yet what truly makes Edakkal remarkable is not its geological formation, but the dense network of carvings that cover its walls. Hundreds of petroglyphs, images, geometric patterns, human figures, animals, symbols, and mysterious marks that resemble proto-writing have been etched into the rock surface. These engravings appear to span multiple eras of human activity, suggesting that the site may have served as a cultural or ceremonial space for thousands of years. Some scholars believe the earliest carvings could date back as far as 6,000 years, while others may belong to later periods connected to early historic cultures of southern India. The cave was first brought to scientific attention in the late 19th century, when the British officer Fred Fawcett stumbled upon the carvings in 1890 during a survey of the region. Since that moment, Edakkal has fascinated archaeologists, historians, and geologists alike. Yet many aspects of the site remain deeply puzzling. Among the many enigmas of Edakkal, perhaps the most intriguing is the astonishing precision visible in the carved lines themselves. At first glance, the images may appear simple, but closer examination reveals a level of consistency and deliberate craftsmanship that is difficult to explain with the limited tools believed to have existed at the time. Many of the lines cut into the stone maintain a remarkably even depth and width, suggesting controlled and repeated movements rather than random scratching. Some of the engravings form sharp angles, symmetrical shapes, and carefully proportioned human figures whose outlines remain clearly visible even after thousands of years of weathering. Certain geometric patterns appear almost diagrammatic, as if they were designed according to a visual logic, rather than improvised artistic expression. When researchers examine these carvings under detailed lighting, they often notice that the grooves seem to have been incised with surprising accuracy across the hard rock surface. The stone walls inside Edakkal are not soft materials that can be easily etched with crude tools. They are composed of dense rock that normally requires persistent effort or hardened instruments to cut into. This raises an important technological question. What kind of tools did the ancient carvers actually use? Some archaeologists suggest that sharp stone implements may have been repeatedly struck against the rock to slowly deepen the grooves over long periods of time. Others propose that early metal tools from later cultural phases might have been used to refine or extend earlier carvings. However, neither theory fully explains the uniform quality seen across many of the engravings. If the carvings were created over centuries by different groups using different tools, one might expect significant variation in depth, style, or technique. Yet many of the lines display a surprisingly consistent execution, as though the creators possessed a reliable method for controlling the carving process. This precision becomes even more mysterious when observing larger compositions where multiple figures interact within the same carved scene. Human shapes appear standing beside animals. Abstract symbols are placed deliberately between them, and repeated motifs occur across different sections of the cave walls. These patterns hint that the carvings may not simply be random art, but rather elements of a symbolic communication system, whose meaning has been lost to time. Another intriguing aspect is how some of the symbols resemble characters from early writing systems, while not matching any known script exactly. A few shapes bear similarities to the ancient Brahmi script, one of the earliest writing systems used in the Indian subcontinent. Yet other symbols diverge significantly from Brahmi, appearing more primitive or entirely unique. This has led some researchers to speculate that Edakkal may preserve a transitional stage between pictorial symbols and structured writing. If true, the carvings could represent a rare glimpse into how early humans experimented with recording information visually before fully developed alphabets emerged. However, because the symbols cannot be definitively translated, their purpose remains uncertain. They may have been ritual markers, clan identifiers, astronomical references, territorial records, or perhaps a narrative sequence whose cultural context has vanished. The cave's high altitude and secluded location add another layer of mystery. Transporting people, tools, and possibly ceremonial objects to this mountaintop chamber would have required deliberate effort. It seems unlikely that such a demanding climb would be undertaken merely for casual decoration. Many archaeologists therefore suspect that Edakkal held special cultural significance, possibly functioning as a sacred site or gathering place for prehistoric communities living in the surrounding valleys. The chamber's natural structure might even have enhanced its symbolic power. A hidden stone chamber formed by a massive rock slab balanced above the earth could easily have been interpreted as a place where the natural and spiritual worlds intersected. Even after more than a century of research, Edakkal caves still challenges our understanding of ancient human creativity and technology. The carvings remain silent traces left by unknown artists who carefully etched their marks into the hard rock thousands of years ago. The precision of these lines suggests a level of patience, planning, and technical skill that is often underestimated in prehistoric societies. Yet without written explanations or cultural traditions to interpret them, the true meaning of these carvings remains uncertain. Hidden high in the mountains of Kerala, the chamber continues to hold a story carved in stone, one that modern science has yet to fully understand. In your opinion, how were the astonishingly precise carvings inside Edakkal caves created thousands of years ago? And what kind of tools or technology might have been used? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Beneath the historic city of Cusco, once the capital of the powerful Inca civilization, lies a mysterious underground world that has fascinated explorers, archaeologists, and historians for centuries. Known today as the Cusco subterranean tunnel network, this labyrinth of passages is believed to extend deep beneath the ancient city and possibly far beyond its limits. References to these tunnels appear in early colonial chronicles written shortly after the Spanish conquest of the Andes. According to several Spanish priests and chroniclers in the 16th and 17th centuries, the Incas had constructed a network of underground corridors known as the Chincana, hidden pathways that linked sacred temples, fortresses, and ceremonial spaces across the city. Some accounts claim that these tunnels connected major structures such as the fortress of Sacsayhuaman with the revered Temple of the Sun, Coricancha. While many of these descriptions were once dismissed as exaggerations or myths, modern investigations have confirmed that portions of these subterranean passages do indeed exist. Yet despite centuries of curiosity, the true scale and purpose of the network remain largely unknown because large sections are collapsed, sealed, or inaccessible beneath modern buildings. What makes this underground system particularly intriguing is not merely its existence, but the remarkable level of engineering precision displayed in its construction. Among the most puzzling aspects is the way the tunnels were carved directly through solid rock with an accuracy that appears astonishing even by modern standards. Archaeological observations of several accessible passages reveal walls that are unusually smooth and straight, corners that approach near-perfect right angles, and surfaces that appear deliberately polished. These characteristics are especially striking because the Inca civilization did not possess iron or steel tools. Their available materials included stone hammers, harder volcanic rocks used as pounding tools, and relatively soft metal alloys such as copper or bronze. From a technological perspective, such tools would normally struggle to cut through extremely hard Andean stones, like granite and andesite, with the degree of precision seen in many Inca constructions. Yet the tunnels beneath Cusco appear to reflect the same extraordinary craftsmanship found in the city's famous above-ground architecture, where massive stones fit together so tightly that even a thin blade cannot be inserted between them. The mystery, therefore, centers on how the Incas were able to achieve such precise excavation inside solid bedrock, using what appear to be comparatively simple tools. Some researchers propose that the builders relied on a combination of hammerstones and patient abrasion techniques, gradually grinding away the rock using sand or other abrasive materials. Others suggest that the Incas possessed highly refined stoneworking traditions developed over centuries of experimentation, enabling them to shape even the hardest rock through repeated percussion and polishing methods. However, The remarkable consistency of the tunnel walls and the apparent geometric regularity of some sections continue to raise questions about whether additional techniques, now lost or poorly understood, may have been involved. In certain passages, the rock surfaces appear so evenly finished that they resemble machine-cut stone, a visual effect that has fueled speculation about forgotten engineering knowledge within the Inca world. Equally impressive is the structural stability of these underground spaces. Many of the tunnels are believed to be at least 5 centuries old, yet some segments remain intact despite earthquakes and the constant geological movement of the Andean region. The Incas seem to have carefully shaped ceilings and walls to distribute pressure through the surrounding rock, preventing collapse. In some areas, the tunnels appear to incorporate subtle curvature or natural arching forms that help channel stress away from vulnerable points. These features suggest a deep practical understanding of stone behavior and structural balance. Furthermore, certain passages display evidence of drainage channels or slight floor gradients, implying that the builders anticipated water infiltration and designed ways to prevent flooding within the underground system. Another layer of mystery surrounds the true extent of the tunnel network. Over the past century, several exploration attempts have reported encountering complex underground mazes beneath Cusco. Some explorers described branching corridors that seem to extend far beyond the city center, though many of these reports remain difficult to verify because numerous entrances have been sealed or collapsed. Local legends even claim that some tunnels once stretched for kilometers, linking distant ceremonial centers throughout the sacred valley. While such claims may contain elements of myth, archaeological surveys using modern ground-penetrating radar have detected anomalies beneath certain areas of the city that could indicate additional subterranean voids. Unfortunately, large-scale excavation is extremely difficult because much of modern Cusco sits directly above the ancient Inca foundations, limiting how extensively archaeologists can investigate. The purpose of these underground passages is also still debated. Some scholars believe the tunnels served as hidden routes, connecting important temples and administrative centers, allowing priests or elite messengers to move discreetly through the city. Others think the passages may have had ceremonial or symbolic significance, reflecting the Andean cosmological idea of the 3 worlds: the sky realm, the earthly realm, and the inner world beneath the ground associated with ancestors and spiritual forces. In this interpretation, descending into the tunnels could have represented a ritual journey into the sacred underworld. There are also persistent stories that the tunnels were used to hide treasures when Spanish forces entered Cusco during the conquest in the 16th century. According to these legends, gold objects and sacred artifacts were concealed deep within the underground labyrinth, and some entrances were intentionally destroyed to prevent their discovery. Although no confirmed treasure chambers have been found, the stories continue to capture the imagination of both researchers and adventurers. Ultimately, the Cusco subterranean tunnel network stands as one of the most intriguing remnants of Inca engineering. Hidden beneath a city that already astonishes visitors with its perfectly fitted stone walls, this underground system hints at an even more complex layer of architectural achievement. The tunnels reveal not only the Incas' ability to shape massive stone structures above ground, but also their capability to excavate precise passages through bedrock with remarkable skill. Yet despite archaeological advances, many questions remain unanswered. How did the Inca engineers plan and align these tunnels beneath an already complex urban landscape? What exact tools and methods allowed them to carve such smooth and accurate surfaces inside hard stone? And how extensive is the network that still lies buried beneath the streets of modern Cusco? For now, much of this subterranean world remains unexplored, leaving the Cusco tunnel system as a silent and enduring reminder that even one of the most studied civilizations of the ancient Americas may still hold secrets hidden deep within the earth. Do you think the engineers of the Inca civilization possessed lost stone-cutting techniques that modern science has yet to fully understand? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Beneath the towering sandstone cliffs of southern Jordan lies a hidden world that most visitors to Petra never fully see. While the city is famous for its monumental facades carved into glowing red rock, archaeologists have long known that Petra is not only a city of temples and monuments above ground, but also a complex network of subterranean tomb chambers carved deep within the mountains themselves. These underground spaces, created more than 2,000 years ago by the Nabatean civilization, form a labyrinth of burial rooms, corridors, niches, and hidden chambers cut directly into solid sandstone. At first glance, the idea of carving tombs into soft rock may seem straightforward. Yet when researchers began to closely examine the interiors of these chambers, they discovered something that raised serious questions about how such spaces were actually constructed using ancient technology. Many of the subterranean tomb rooms display remarkably straight walls, sharply defined corners, and flat ceilings that appear surprisingly uniform, almost as if they had been shaped by modern mechanical tools rather than simple chisels and hammers. The Nabateans, known historically as skilled desert traders and master engineers of water systems, left behind no detailed written descriptions of the construction methods used to create these underground tomb complexes. As a result, archaeologists must rely entirely on physical evidence carved into the rock itself to reconstruct how these spaces were made. And it is precisely within that stone surface that some of the most puzzling clues can be found. In numerous tomb chambers throughout Petra, researchers have observed long sequences of parallel marks running across the rock walls and ceilings. These grooves often appear evenly spaced and surprisingly consistent in depth and direction, suggesting a highly controlled cutting process. At first, scholars assumed these were simply the traces left behind by iron chisels used repeatedly by workers over long periods of time. However, when the marks were studied more closely, certain patterns began to emerge that did not perfectly match the expected results of traditional hand chiseling. In some chambers, the grooves are unusually regular, forming bands that look almost machine-like in their consistency. The surfaces between the marks are often smoother than one would expect from crude ancient tools. And in several cases, entire sections of wall appear to have been polished or smoothed to a degree that seems remarkably advanced for the period. Some archaeologists propose that Nabatean workers may have used abrasive sand combined with stone or metal tools to grind the rock surface down gradually, effectively sanding the stone to achieve a flatter finish. Yet even this explanation raises further questions. Sandstone, although softer than granite, still requires enormous effort to shape with precision over large areas. Producing smooth vertical walls several meters high inside enclosed underground spaces would have demanded extraordinary time, coordination, and technical skill. Another mystery lies in the sheer scale of the chambers themselves. Many subterranean tomb rooms are not small cavities, but spacious halls large enough to hold multiple burial niches along the walls. In some cases, the rooms are carved with carefully balanced proportions, symmetrical layouts, and central pillars formed directly from the remaining rock. Creating such spaces requires not only labor, but also accurate spatial planning. Workers would have needed to know exactly how far to cut into the mountain while maintaining structural stability, avoiding collapse, and ensuring that the ceiling remained strong enough to support the weight of the rock above. Without modern surveying equipment, achieving this level of control deep within a rock face becomes difficult to explain. Some researchers speculate that the Nabateans may have developed specialized measuring techniques using ropes, plumb lines, or marked grids to guide their excavation process. Yet no physical evidence of such systems has been definitively identified. The most perplexing evidence, however, remains the enigmatic tool marks themselves. In several chambers, the grooves carved into the stone appear so uniform that they almost resemble the marks produced by rotating cutting tools or mechanical scraping devices. While this does not imply the existence of advanced machinery in the modern sense, it does suggest that the Nabateans may have possessed sophisticated carving techniques that have not survived in historical records. Some surfaces show signs of gradual smoothing that could indicate prolonged abrasion processes rather than simple impact cutting. Others reveal subtle curving patterns that hint at controlled tool movement across the stone surface. Because sandstone erodes over time, many of the original marks may have softened or disappeared entirely, leaving archaeologists with only fragments of the original working traces. Adding to the mystery is the fact that these underground chambers were often carved in locations that would have been difficult to access during construction. Many tomb entrances lie halfway up steep cliff faces, meaning workers likely had to build scaffolding or carve temporary ledges just to reach the work area. From there, they would begin hollowing out the interior of the mountain, removing vast quantities of stone piece by piece. Yet despite the logistical challenges, the final results often display an unexpected elegance and refinement. Walls appear balanced, corners meet with impressive accuracy, and the internal geometry of many chambers suggests a carefully planned architectural vision rather than rough excavation. The purpose of these subterranean tomb chambers also contributes to their enigmatic nature. Petra served as a major trading hub connecting Arabia, the Mediterranean, and the Near East, and its wealth allowed the Nabateans to construct elaborate monuments for both the living and the dead. Tomb architecture was an important expression of status and cultural identity. By carving burial spaces directly into the mountains surrounding the city, the Nabateans created a landscape where the boundary between natural geology and human engineering became almost invisible. Entire cliff faces were transformed into monumental cemeteries, and beneath those facades lay deeper rooms intended to house generations of the deceased. Yet the deeper researchers explore Petra's underground spaces, the more they realize how little is fully understood about the methods used to create them. Modern archaeological surveys continue to reveal new chambers and hidden spaces beneath the city. Ground-penetrating radar and geological scanning suggest that additional voids may still exist within the rock, waiting to be explored. If true, the underground architecture of Petra could be far more extensive than what has been documented so far. Each new discovery raises fresh questions about the organization of labor, the planning of subterranean structures, and the tools used to carve them. The enigmatic tool marks etched into the stone remain one of the most intriguing pieces of this puzzle. They are silent records of ancient craftsmanship, frozen in the rock for more than 2 millennia. Yet even today, archaeologists cannot fully reconstruct the exact techniques that produced them. In the end, Petra's subterranean tomb chambers remain both impressive engineering achievements and enduring mysteries. They show that the Nabateans possessed advanced knowledge of stone carving, spatial design, and structural stability. Yet the precise tool marks, smooth surfaces, and carefully balanced geometry inside these chambers still challenge modern explanations. More than 2,000 years later, these underground tombs continue to hint at lost techniques and remarkable craftsmanship hidden beneath the desert cliffs of Petra. What do you think created the unusually precise tool marks inside Petra's underground tomb chambers? Advanced ancient craftsmanship we still don't fully understand, or techniques that have simply been lost to history? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Beneath the crowded streets, historic churches, and bustling markets of modern Naples lies a hidden world carved deep into the volcanic rock of southern Italy. A vast subterranean labyrinth known today as the Naples underground Greek-Roman tunnels, or Napoli sotterranea. Stretching silently beneath the city for kilometers, this immense network of chambers, shafts, aqueducts, and corridors forms a second city below the living one above. The origins of this underground complex date back more than 2,400 years, when Greek settlers founded the city of Naples. To construct their buildings, walls, and streets, they began quarrying a soft volcanic stone known as tuff, cutting deep into the earth to extract massive blocks for construction. Over time, the empty spaces left behind gradually evolved into tunnels and chambers. So centuries later, Roman engineers expanded and transformed these cavities into an advanced underground infrastructure, integrating aqueducts, cisterns, passageways, and ventilation shafts into a sprawling network that supplied water and stability to the growing metropolis above. Today, archaeologists estimate that this subterranean system extends for hundreds of kilometers beneath Naples, reaching depths of up to 40 meters below the surface. What makes this underground world particularly fascinating is not only its size, but the astonishing level of technical precision and engineering knowledge demonstrated by the people who carved it. Achievements that continue to puzzle researchers and engineers even in the modern age. Among the many mysteries of the Naples underground, one of the most remarkable lies in the extraordinary precision with which the tunnels were carved into the volcanic tuff rock. At first glance, the stone may appear relatively soft compared with granite or basalt, but shaping vast underground chambers with consistent geometry and structural stability would still have required immense effort and remarkable technical skill. Yet throughout many sections of the tunnels, the walls appear surprisingly straight and uniform, while the corridors maintain consistent proportions over long distances. Some chambers display near-perfect angles, smooth surfaces, and carefully defined edges, as if the stone had been shaped according to a clear architectural plan rather than simply hollowed out randomly during quarrying. Even more intriguing are the surfaces themselves. In certain areas, the stone appears unusually smooth, suggesting that it may have been intentionally finished or refined after the initial cutting process. Archaeologists believe that the ancient workers primarily relied on metal chisels, hammers, and simple hand tools. Yet replicating such uniformity across large subterranean spaces using only these implements would have been extraordinarily time-consuming and technically demanding. This raises an enduring question. How did ancient builders achieve such consistent shaping of the rock, particularly in dimly lit underground environments where visibility and measurement would have been extremely limited? The precision becomes even more striking when considering the scale of the underground chambers themselves. Some spaces stretch upward like artificial caverns, rising 20 or even 30 meters high. Maintaining structural stability at such heights would have required careful control over the angles and thickness of the surrounding stone walls. If too much material were removed, the ceiling could collapse. If too little were removed, the space would remain unusable. Yet the ancient builders appear to have achieved a delicate balance, leaving behind pillars, arches, and curved ceilings that distribute the weight of the rock above. These structural forms resemble principles of load distribution that modern engineers still employ today. The ability to anticipate how volcanic rock would respond to excavation suggests that Greek and Roman builders possessed a deep practical understanding of geology and structural behavior, even if they lacked the mathematical formulas used in modern engineering. Some researchers believe that the tunnels may have been carefully planned from the surface using reference shafts and markers, allowing workers underground to maintain consistent alignment. Others suspect that generations of quarry workers gradually refined their techniques through experience, learning how the rock behaved and adjusting their cutting patterns accordingly. However, the remarkable regularity seen in many sections still leaves open the possibility that more sophisticated surveying methods may have been used than historians currently understand. Equally impressive is the way these precisely carved spaces were later integrated into a sophisticated hydraulic system. When Roman engineers inherited the underground cavities, so they transformed them into an extensive network of aqueduct channels and cisterns designed to supply water to the entire city. Narrow channels were cut along the sides of tunnels, guiding water through the labyrinth toward enormous reservoirs deep underground. These reservoirs could hold vast quantities of water, ensuring a stable supply during dry periods or times of siege. Achieving this system required extremely accurate control of slope and direction, because water must flow at a carefully calibrated gradient. If the slope were too steep, the water would rush uncontrollably and damage the channel. If too shallow, the water would stagnate and fail to reach its destination. Yet the Roman engineers appear to have achieved an astonishing level of precision in these gradients, despite lacking modern measuring instruments. The tunnels also feature numerous vertical shafts that connect the underground world to the surface. These shafts served multiple purposes, allowing workers to access the tunnels during construction, enabling residents above to draw water from the cisterns below, and helping maintain airflow throughout the underground system. Ventilation itself represents another intriguing feature of the Naples underground. Many tunnels lie dozens of meters below the city streets, yet the air within them remains surprisingly breathable. The vertical shafts, combined with the layout of corridors and chambers, appear to create a natural circulation of air driven by differences in temperature and pressure between the surface and the subterranean environment. This passive ventilation system would have allowed workers, water collectors, and later inhabitants to spend extended periods underground without suffocation. Such an understanding of airflow may have been developed through practical experimentation, but the consistency with which these ventilation features appear across the network suggests that ancient builders had learned to intentionally incorporate them into their designs. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the Naples underground is its resilience through time. Despite being carved more than 2 millennia ago, large portions of the tunnels remain structurally stable today. The volcanic tuff, though relatively soft during excavation, hardens when exposed to air, creating a surprisingly durable structure once the chambers were opened. The curved ceilings and arch-like formations left by the builders distribute stress efficiently through the surrounding rock, preventing collapse even under the weight of the city above. Over the centuries, these tunnels have been reused again and again by different generations. In the Middle Ages, they served as storage areas and secret passageways. During the Second World War, thousands of residents of Naples sheltered in these underground chambers while bombs fell above the city. In those desperate moments, the ancient tunnels carved by Greek and Roman workers became life-saving refuges for modern civilians, a testament to the durability and foresight of their original design. Despite decades of archaeological research, the Naples underground still holds many unanswered questions. Scholars continue to debate how ancient engineers coordinated such large-scale excavation beneath a growing city without causing structural collapse. The methods used to maintain straight tunnels, consistent chamber sizes, and accurate water gradients remain partly mysterious. Most striking is the precision of the tough stone cutting itself. Even today, it is difficult to imagine how workers using only simple tools and torchlight were able to shape the volcanic rock with such accuracy. The walls, angles, and smooth surfaces suggest careful planning and impressive technical skill. In many ways, the Naples underground remains a silent monument to ancient engineering, a hidden masterpiece that still challenges modern understanding of what early civilizations could achieve beneath the earth. How do you think the ancient Greeks and Romans were able to carve such precise tunnels deep into volcanic tuff rock using only simple tools? Share your thoughts or theories in the comments below. Deep in the Oaxaca Valley of southern Mexico lies one of the most enigmatic archaeological sites in Mesoamerica, the Mitla Underground Chamber Complex, a place where architecture, ritual belief, and unexplained engineering converge beneath the surface of the earth. While many ancient cities in the region are defined by towering pyramids or monumental plazas, Mitla stands apart for a different reason entirely. Hidden beneath its ceremonial courtyards and stone palaces lies a network of subterranean chambers and passages whose construction reveals a level of precision that continues to puzzle archaeologists and engineers alike. Built and expanded by the Zapotec civilization and later used by the Mixtec, Mitla was long regarded as a sacred place associated with death and the underworld. Its very name is derived from the Nahuatl word Mictlan, meaning the place of the dead. And according to early colonial accounts, the complex was believed to contain a gateway leading to the realm of departed souls. Yet beyond mythology, the true mystery of Mitla lies in the physical reality of what exists beneath the site. A series of underground chambers carved and assembled with an extraordinary level of technical accuracy that seems astonishing given the technological limitations of the ancient builders. Among the most remarkable aspects of the underground complex is the way the chambers themselves were constructed. The subterranean rooms beneath Mitla are defined by stone walls composed of large blocks that fit together with an almost uncanny precision. In many places, the stones appear to interlock so tightly that even a thin blade cannot be inserted between them. The surfaces of these blocks are flat and sharply defined, and the corners of the rooms meet at angles that are strikingly straight and geometrically consistent. This level of stonework suggests a carefully planned architectural process rather than rough excavation. Yet the civilizations that built Mitla did not possess iron tools, steel chisels, or advanced cutting machinery. Archaeological evidence indicates that the Zapotec relied primarily on stone tools, abrasive sand, and manual labor. With such limited technology, achieving the perfectly cut blocks and smooth wall faces seen in the underground chambers becomes a deeply intriguing puzzle. Scholars have long debated whether the stones were shaped at quarries and then transported underground, or whether they were carved and fitted directly in place. Either scenario presents serious technical challenges. If the stones were shaped elsewhere, they would have had to be measured and cut with astonishing accuracy before being moved into confined subterranean spaces. If they were shaped within the chambers themselves, the builders would have needed extraordinary control over cutting techniques in extremely restricted working conditions. The precision of the underground construction also suggests that the chambers were not simply functional tomb spaces, but carefully engineered ceremonial environments. Some rooms align closely with the architecture above them, indicating that the subterranean structures were integrated into the overall design of the site. The builders appear to have planned both the surface buildings and the underground chambers as parts of a unified architectural system. In certain locations, stairways lead down into crypt-like spaces where the stonework becomes even more refined, as though the deepest sections of the complex were considered the most sacred. Early Spanish chroniclers who arrived in the 16th century described Mitla as a place where Zapotec priests performed rituals connected with death and the afterlife. According to their reports, the priests believed that the souls of rulers descended into hidden chambers beneath the city after burial. One account even describes a deep subterranean passage said to extend far beneath the ground, guarded by priests who controlled access to the sacred interior. Although many of these descriptions may have been influenced by European interpretations of indigenous beliefs, they nevertheless hint at the possibility that the underground network was once more extensive than what archaeologists have been able to explore so far. Above ground, Mitla is famous for its extraordinary geometric stone mosaics known as grekas, decorative patterns composed of thousands of precisely cut stones fitted together without mortar. These patterns cover the walls of several palace structures and form intricate designs that appear almost mathematical in their complexity. The same attention to precision that defines these mosaics is reflected in the underground chambers, suggesting that the builders possessed a highly sophisticated understanding of geometry and stoneworking. Some scholars estimate that more than 100,000 individual stone pieces were used to create the decorative facades throughout the site. Each stone had to be cut individually and positioned with care to maintain the continuity of the patterns. Although these mosaics are visible on the surface, they reinforce the impression that the engineers of Mitla possessed skills that extended far beyond simple construction. When considered together with the underground chambers, they reveal a tradition of stone craftsmanship that was both technically advanced and artistically refined. Another intriguing feature of the complex is the possibility that the known chambers represent only a fraction of the structures that once existed beneath Mitla. For centuries, local legends have described an enormous labyrinth of tunnels stretching under the site, connecting ceremonial buildings with hidden burial chambers. Some early colonial sources claimed that these passages extended for great distances and were deliberately sealed after the Spanish conquest to prevent indigenous religious practices from continuing. In modern times, archaeologists have used ground-penetrating radar and other non-invasive survey techniques to study the subsurface layers beneath Mitla. Several surveys have detected anomalies that could indicate large cavities or unexcavated spaces below the existing structures. Because parts of the archaeological zone lie beneath later colonial buildings, including a Spanish church constructed directly over earlier Zapotec temples, extensive excavation has been difficult. As a result, large sections of the underground complex may still remain undiscovered. The engineering of Mitla also raises questions about how the builders managed the structural stability of their architecture in a region prone to earthquakes. Oaxaca lies in an area of significant seismic activity, yet many of Mitla's stone buildings have endured for centuries. Archaeological studies suggest that the builders employed layered foundation systems using compacted earth and carefully arranged stone bases that could absorb vibration and distribute stress. More such techniques demonstrate a practical understanding of structural resilience long before the development of modern earthquake-resistant engineering. The ability to combine this structural knowledge with the delicate precision of stone cutting further emphasizes the remarkable technical capabilities of the civilization responsible for the complex. One of the most visually striking buildings at Mitla, the Palace of the Columns, contains massive monolithic stone pillars that once supported the roof of a large ceremonial hall. Each column was carved from a single block of stone weighing many tons. Transporting and erecting such heavy elements without wheeled vehicles or draft animals would have required coordinated labor and ingenious mechanical methods. Yet the exact techniques remain uncertain. When these monumental features are considered alongside the underground chambers, they reveal a society capable of undertaking ambitious architectural projects that demanded careful planning and advanced craftsmanship. Despite decades of research, Mitla still puzzles archaeologists. The underground chambers, with their perfectly fitted stones and remarkable geometric precision, suggest a level of planning and engineering difficult to explain using the simple tools believed to have existed at the time. Although ongoing studies continue to reveal more about the Zapotec and Mixtec cultures, many aspects of the Mitla underground chamber complex remain unsolved. The possibility that more hidden chambers and tunnels still lie beneath the site only deepens the mystery, reminding us that ancient civilizations may have possessed knowledge and craftsmanship far more advanced than we once believed. How do you think the ancient Zapotec managed to carve and fit the stones in Mitla's underground chambers with such near-perfect precision, using only primitive tools? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Rising above the banks of the Mitkavari River in eastern Georgia lies a place that seems less like a typical archaeological site and more like the fossilized remains of an entire civilization carved into stone. The ancient rock-cut settlement known as Uplistsikhe, often translated as the Fortress of the Lord, is one of the most extraordinary underground cities ever discovered. Unlike most ancient cities, which were built by stacking stones, bricks, and timber together, Uplistsikhe was created by doing the opposite. Instead of building upward, its creators removed the mountain itself. Entire halls, temples, passageways, streets, and chambers were carved directly into a massive natural formation of sandstone, gradually transforming a solid cliff into a functioning urban landscape. Archaeologists believe the earliest sections of the complex date back to around the 8th century BCE, long before the rise of many classical civilizations that later dominated the region. Over centuries, the site expanded into a vast network of rock-cut architecture, eventually becoming a major religious and cultural center, situated along important trade routes that connected the Caucasus to Persia, Anatolia, and beyond. What makes Uplistsikhe truly astonishing, however, is the engineering concept behind its construction. Most ancient cities required transporting building materials from quarries and assembling them into structures. Uplistsikhe required the opposite approach. Enormous quantities of rock had to be carefully removed while preserving the stability of the surrounding stone. The city was not built with blocks. It was sculpted out of a mountain. This means that every room, column, corridor, and staircase began as solid rock. The builders first had to imagine the space they wanted to create, and then gradually excavate it from the inside out. Even today, modern engineers recognize that carving large hollow spaces inside rock formations is structurally risky. Remove too much material in the wrong place, and the ceiling collapses. Yet in Uplistsikhe, dozens of chambers with curved ceilings and smooth walls remain standing after more than 2,000 years. This raises a fascinating question that archaeologists still debate. How did ancient builders, working with relatively primitive tools, manage to excavate such a large and complex underground city without causing widespread structural failure? The sandstone cliff into which Uplistsikhe was carved contains hundreds of man-made spaces arranged across terraces overlooking the river valley. Many of these chambers are connected by narrow tunnels, stairways cut directly into the rock, and winding passageways that once formed the streets of the city. Walking through the ruins today reveals an environment that feels simultaneously architectural and geological, as though the city emerged organically from the stone itself. Some rooms are small and simple, possibly used as living quarters or storage areas. Others are large ceremonial halls with carved pillars and arched ceilings. The surfaces of the walls are often surprisingly smooth, suggesting that the builders did more than simply chip away at the rock. They intentionally shaped and finished it. In some chambers, the ceilings were sculpted to imitate the wooden beams and roof structures used in traditional above-ground buildings, even though the entire room is carved from a single mass of stone. This detail hints at a remarkable architectural awareness. The builders were not merely excavating caves, but deliberately reproducing the design language of constructed architecture within solid rock. The technical implications of this are profound. Excavating rock using ancient tools, likely bronze or early iron chisels and hammers, would have been extremely slow and labor-intensive. Removing enough stone to create hundreds of chambers could have required generations of continuous work. Yet the precision seen in many parts of Uplistsikhe suggests that the excavation was carefully controlled. Corners are often straight, ceilings symmetrical, and columns proportioned in ways that appear intentional rather than accidental. Archaeologists estimate that tens of thousands of cubic meters of rock must have been removed to form the complex. Even with modern drilling equipment, such an undertaking would be a major engineering project. How ancient builders achieved this using simple tools remains one of the most intriguing aspects of the site. Some researchers believe the softness of the sandstone made carving easier than cutting granite or basalt. But this explanation only partially solves the puzzle. Soft stone still requires careful planning, and excavating large volumes without collapsing the surrounding structure would have required a sophisticated understanding of the rock's stability. Beyond the excavation itself, Uplistsikhe reveals evidence of urban planning rarely associated with ancient cave settlements. The city appears to have been organized into distinct functional zones, including residential areas, ceremonial spaces, storage chambers, and public gathering places. One of the most striking features is a rock-cut theater, where seating tiers were carved into the hillside overlooking a performance area. The arrangement of these seats suggests that the designers considered visibility and acoustics, creating a space where large groups of people could gather for rituals or performances. Nearby are temples and sanctuaries that likely played a central role in the spiritual life of the community. Before Christianity spread across Georgia, the region was home to various pagan belief systems, and Uplistsikhe appears to have served as an important religious center during this period. Some chambers contain raised platforms and channels carved into the floor, which archaeologists suspect may have been used during ritual ceremonies, possibly involving offerings or liquid libations. Another remarkable element of the complex is a long tunnel descending toward the Mtkvari River. This passageway may have served as a strategic access route to water, particularly during times of siege. From a defensive standpoint, such a tunnel would have allowed inhabitants to reach the river without exposing themselves to attackers above ground. The creation of this passage would have required careful excavation through the rock while maintaining a stable gradient and ensuring the tunnel did not collapse. Its presence highlights the practical considerations built into the design of the city. Uplistsikhe was not merely a ceremonial site. It was also a functioning settlement capable of supporting a sizable population. Over the centuries, the city evolved under the influence of multiple cultures and empires. Archaeological evidence suggests periods of Persian, Hellenistic, and later Christian influence. Some structures appear to have been modified or expanded over time, reflecting changes in religious practices and political control. Yet despite these transformations, the core of the city remained the same: a vast architectural sculpture carved directly into living rock. This continuity is part of what makes the site so extraordinary. Unlike conventional ruins, where buildings collapse and materials erode, many parts of Uplistsikhe still retain the shapes created by its original builders more than 2 millennia ago. Despite its long history, the city eventually declined and was largely abandoned by the 13th century. The Mongol invasions that swept across the Caucasus during this period may have contributed to its downfall, along with earthquakes that damaged sections of the fragile sandstone cliffs. Trade routes also shifted, reducing the strategic importance of the site. Yet the reasons for its rapid decline remain partly uncertain, leaving historians to piece together clues from fragmented evidence. Today, Uplistsikhe remains a powerful reminder of the ingenuity of ancient engineers. Instead of building structures piece by piece, its creators revealed an entire city by removing the stone around it. Every chamber had to be imagined first, and then carefully excavated from solid rock, without collapsing the structure above. The result is a place where human design and natural geology merge into a single landscape. Even after more than 2,000 years, Uplistsikhe still challenges our understanding of ancient technology. How did its builders plan such a complex city inside a mountain? And how did they remove so much rock using only simple tools without bringing the entire structure down? These unanswered questions keep Uplistsikhe one of the most fascinating archaeological mysteries in the world. How do you think ancient builders managed to carve an entire massive city directly into solid rock without causing the mountain to collapse? Share your thoughts or theories in the comments below. Beneath the desert sands of Abydos in southern Egypt lies one of the most perplexing underground structures ever discovered in the ancient world: the Osireion subterranean structure, a massive megalithic complex hidden behind the temple of Seti I. At first glance, the Osireion appears to be part of the temple complex built by Pharaoh Seti I during the 19th dynasty around the 13th century BCE. Yet the moment archaeologists began studying the structure more closely, it became clear that something about it was profoundly different. Its architecture, construction techniques, and immense stone blocks do not resemble the elegant limestone temples typically associated with New Kingdom Egypt. Instead, the Osireion looks older, heavier, and strangely out of place, as if it belongs to a completely different architectural tradition buried deep beneath the desert floor. The structure itself lies roughly 10 to 12 meters below the surrounding ground level. To reach it, visitors must descend through a long stone corridor that gradually slopes downward into the earth, eventually opening into a vast subterranean chamber. The moment this chamber comes into view, the entire atmosphere changes. Massive granite pillars rise from the water-filled floor, supporting enormous stone beams overhead. The chamber feels less like a conventional temple and more like an ancient monument carved into the heart of the earth itself. For many researchers, this immediately raised a puzzling question. Why would the ancient Egyptians build such a colossal structure so deep underground? Constructing large temples above ground was already a monumental task in the ancient world. But excavating a deep pit, transporting huge stones into it, and assembling them with precise alignment would have been an engineering challenge of extraordinary scale. Among all the mysteries surrounding the Osireion, the most astonishing feature is undoubtedly the presence of gigantic granite blocks weighing tens of tons. These stones form the walls, pillars, and structural core of the central chamber, and their sheer size alone is enough to leave modern observers stunned. Some of these granite blocks are estimated to weigh between 70 and 100 tons each. Unlike the smaller limestone blocks commonly used in Egyptian temples, these stones were cut from extremely hard red granite, a material known for its durability, but also notorious for being difficult to shape and polish. Granite is significantly harder than limestone and requires immense effort to cut with precision. Yet the builders of the Osireion managed to carve these enormous stones into clean, rectangular shapes with remarkably flat surfaces and sharp edges. Even more astonishing is the way these massive granite blocks were fitted together. The joints between many of the stones are so tight that in some places it is difficult to insert even a thin blade between them. This level of precision suggests that the builders possessed advanced knowledge of stone cutting and alignment. According to conventional historical understanding, the Egyptians of this period primarily used copper tools, stone pounders, and abrasive sand to shape hard rock. While these tools are known to have been effective for certain tasks, producing perfectly squared granite blocks weighing dozens of tons with such smooth surfaces would have required enormous labor and technical expertise. The Osireion therefore raises an uncomfortable question for archaeologists and engineers alike. How exactly did ancient craftsmen achieve this degree of precision when working with one of the hardest stones available? Transporting these stones presents an equally baffling challenge. The nearest granite quarries are located hundreds of kilometers away in the region of Aswan. Moving blocks weighing up to 100 tons across such distances would ancient Egyptian reliefs do depict the transport of large statues and stones using sledges pulled by teams of workers across lubricated ground. But the scale of the Osireion blocks pushes these methods to their limits. Once the stones reached Abydos, the challenge would have become even greater. They would have needed to be lowered into a deep excavation pit before being positioned with remarkable precision inside the underground chamber. Without cranes, steel cables, or modern lifting equipment, achieving such an operation would have demanded extraordinary ingenuity. The architectural style of the Osireion further deepens the mystery. Instead of the refined and decorative style seen in temples above ground, the Osireion is built using enormous megalithic blocks arranged in a stark, almost primordial configuration. This construction style is often compared to what archaeologists call Cyclopean masonry, a technique involving gigantic stones fitted together without the use of mortar. Similar styles appear in several ancient sites around the world, such as the megalithic terraces of Baalbek in Lebanon or the precisely fitted stone walls of Machu Picchu in Peru. In Egypt, however, this style is extremely rare, making the Osireion stand out as a structural anomaly. Another striking feature of the Osireion is the presence of water surrounding the central platform. The chamber is frequently flooded by groundwater, creating the eerie impression of a temple rising from a dark underground pool. Some Egyptologists believe this may have symbolic meaning. In ancient Egyptian cosmology, the world was believed to have emerged from a primordial ocean known as Nun. Because the Osireion was associated with Osiris, the god of death and rebirth, some scholars suggest that the structure may have been intentionally designed to represent the mythical waters from which creation began. Standing inside the chamber today, surrounded by massive granite pillars emerging from still water, it is easy to see why this interpretation holds appeal. Yet there is still debate over whether the water was part of the original design, or simply the result of natural groundwater accumulating over time. Another puzzling detail is the clear architectural contrast between the Osireion and the Temple of Seti I above it. The temple itself is constructed primarily from finely carved limestone blocks, decorated with detailed reliefs and inscriptions. Its style fits perfectly within the artistic traditions of the New Kingdom period. The Osireion, by contrast, appears far more primitive and monumental, relying on enormous granite blocks rather than decorative stonework. This stark difference has led some researchers to speculate that the Osireion may have existed before the temple was built and was later incorporated into the larger sacred complex at Abydos. If this hypothesis were true, the Osireion could potentially date back to a much earlier phase of Egyptian civilization, though definitive evidence remains elusive. Ultimately, the Osireion continues to fascinate historians, archaeologists, and engineers because it challenges conventional assumptions about ancient construction techniques. Its subterranean design, immense granite blocks, and mysterious water-filled chamber combine to create an architectural puzzle that has not yet been fully solved. Despite more than a century of study since its modern rediscovery, many questions remain unanswered. How did ancient builders cut and shape granite blocks weighing up to 100 tons with such precision? How were these stones transported across vast distances and lowered into a deep underground structure? And why was such an enormous and technically demanding monument built beneath the earth rather than above it? In the silent depths beneath the Temple of Seti I, the Osireion stands as a powerful reminder that the technological capabilities of the ancient world may have been more sophisticated than we often imagine. Surrounded by towering granite pillars and still water, the underground chamber feels less like a ruin and more like a message from a distant past. A place where engineering, mythology, and mystery intersect in ways that modern science is still striving to understand. How do you think ancient builders were able to cut and assemble the massive granite blocks weighing tens of tons with such astonishing precision in the Osireion? Share your thoughts or theories in the comments below. Rising from the red sandstone cliffs overlooking the quiet waters of Agastya Lake in southern India, the Badami Cave Temple Complex stands as one of the most extraordinary achievements of early rock-cut architecture. Carved directly into the rugged escarpments of what is now the town of Badami in the state of Karnataka, these temples were created during the 6th and 7th centuries under the powerful Chalukya dynasty. At first glance, the site appears almost organic, as if the mountain itself had shaped these sanctuaries over centuries of erosion. But closer inspection reveals something far more astonishing. Every column, chamber, and sculpture inside the caves was deliberately carved by human hands from a single mass of solid rock. Unlike temples built with stacked blocks, the Badami caves were not constructed piece by piece. Instead, they were hollowed out of the cliff itself, meaning that ancient engineers had to remove enormous quantities of stone while carefully preserving the structural stability of the surrounding rock. Such a method demanded a level of planning that modern architects would still consider risky. A single miscalculation in depth or angle could have cracked the entire structure, collapsing ceilings or destroying sculptures before they were even completed. Yet the temples that remain today show remarkably balanced proportions, smooth interior spaces, and carefully aligned pillars that appear almost mathematically precise. The 4 main caves of Badami form a sequence of sacred spaces dedicated to different religious traditions, reflecting a unique cultural environment where multiple belief systems coexisted. The earliest caves are devoted primarily to Hindu deities, such as Shiva and Vishnu, while the final cave contains sculptures connected to Jain traditions. Each chamber opens onto a veranda supported by rows of carved pillars, leading into a hall whose walls are covered with elaborate relief sculptures depicting scenes from mythology. Among the most famous carvings is the dynamic image of Shiva performing the cosmic dance known as Tandava, portrayed with multiple arms radiating outward in rhythmic motion. Nearby, Vishnu appears in various divine forms, including the towering Trivikrama figure, who strides across the universe in a single cosmic step. These monumental images were not created separately and placed within the temple. They were carved directly from the living rock of the cave walls. In many cases, the sculptures rise 3 or 4 meters high, emerging from the stone with such depth and detail that they seem almost independent of the cliff that contains them. The artists responsible for these works had to visualize each figure in 3 dimensions before even striking the first blow with their tools. Once the surrounding stone was removed, the sculpture itself gradually emerged from the rock like a hidden form waiting to be revealed. Yet perhaps the most perplexing mystery surrounding the Badami caves lies not in their artistic symbolism, but in the tools and techniques used to create them. The cliffs of Badami consist primarily of sandstone, a material softer than granite but still difficult to shape with simple hand tools. More archaeological evidence suggests that the craftsmen of the Chalukya period possessed iron chisels and hammers, but nothing resembling the hardened steel equipment or powered cutting devices used in modern stonework. Despite this limitation, the surfaces inside the caves often appear astonishingly refined. Pillars display sharp edges and symmetrical profiles, while delicate decorative patterns flow across ceilings and walls with remarkable precision. In certain places, the carvings include extremely fine details: tiny strands of jewelry, folds of clothing, and intricate floral patterns that would have required extraordinary control over the stone surface. These details raise an enduring question that continues to intrigue historians and engineers alike. How were such precise carvings achieved with the relatively simple tools believed to exist at the time? Some researchers have proposed that ancient artisans used highly refined iron chisels combined with systematic polishing techniques involving sand and water to gradually smooth the stone. Others suggest that teams of craftsmen may have worked in coordinated stages, beginning with rough excavation and followed by increasingly delicate finishing passes performed by master sculptors. Even with these explanations, however, the level of uniformity visible in many parts of the caves remains difficult to account for. Certain columns, for example, appear almost perfectly symmetrical, or as if they had been shaped according to a geometric template. The consistency of repeating motifs across different chambers also implies that the craftsmen followed precise measurement systems, possibly using cords, wooden rulers, or simple geometric frameworks to guide their work. Yet no surviving documentation describes these methods in detail, leaving scholars to reconstruct the techniques only through physical traces left on the stone itself. Another intriguing aspect of the Badami complex is the necessity of designing the entire structure before excavation even began. Because the temples were carved inward from the cliff face rather than built outward from foundations, the architects had to envision the final layout in advance. Every column, corridor, and sanctuary had to be positioned correctly from the very first stages of excavation. If a pillar were placed incorrectly or carved too thin, the entire chamber might collapse. This means that the builders possessed an advanced understanding of both geometry and structural balance long before modern engineering principles were formally recorded. It is possible that preliminary outlines were drawn directly onto the rock surface before carving began, or that small models made from clay or wood were used to plan the internal spaces. Yet no definitive evidence of such planning tools has survived, leaving much of the design process hidden in history. The enduring condition of the caves also raises additional mysteries. More than 14 centuries have passed since the temples were carved, yet many of the sculptures remain surprisingly well preserved. Although weathering has softened certain surfaces, numerous carvings still retain their original depth and clarity. This durability may be partly due to the geological properties of the sandstone itself, but some experts believe that ancient artisans may have applied finishing techniques that strengthened the surface or slowed erosion. Whether intentional or coincidental, the result is a collection of carvings that continue to communicate their artistry with remarkable vividness across the centuries. Today, the Badami Cave Temple Complex stands not only as a monument of religious devotion, but also as a testament to the ingenuity of ancient engineers and craftsmen. Its halls and sculptures demonstrate a sophisticated mastery of rock-cut architecture that challenges modern assumptions about the technological limits of early civilizations. The unanswered questions surrounding the carving tools, the planning methods, and the extraordinary precision of the stonework ensure that the caves remain more than just historical ruins. They are enduring puzzles carved into the very fabric of the mountain, inviting each generation to reconsider what ancient artisans were truly capable of achieving with the tools and knowledge available to them more than 1,000 years ago. What kind of tools and techniques do you think ancient craftsmen used to carve the Badami caves with such incredible precision more than 1,000 years ago? Share your thoughts or theories in the comments below. Beneath the historic hilltop city of Orvieto lies a hidden world that remained largely unknown for centuries. A vast subterranean labyrinth now known as the Orvieto Underground, carved deep into the volcanic tufa rock that forms the very foundation of the city. This underground complex consists of more than 1,000 caves, wells, passageways, and chambers created over a span of nearly 3 millennia. The earliest parts of this network date back to the era of the Etruscan civilization, whose engineers and builders began hollowing out the soft volcanic rock to construct water systems, storage areas, and hidden spaces beneath the settlement above. Over time, later civilizations, including the Romans and medieval inhabitants, expanded and reused these spaces, so gradually transforming the bedrock beneath Orvieto into a layered underground city. Yet despite decades of archaeological research, the true scale and technical sophistication of this hidden world continue to raise questions that modern science still struggles to answer. What immediately astonishes researchers is the sheer complexity of the underground network. The caves and tunnels are not random excavations, but appear to follow a form of spatial organization. Passageways intersect at calculated angles. Chambers are placed in locations that suggest specific functions, and numerous vertical shafts connect the subterranean spaces with the surface above. In some areas, the tunnels link directly to deep wells that once provided vital access to water during times of siege. Elsewhere, large chambers appear to have served as workshops, storage rooms, or shelters. The fact that many of these spaces were created in different historical periods, yet remain interconnected in a surprisingly coherent system, has led scholars to suspect that the earliest excavators may have already envisioned a broader underground infrastructure. However, no ancient maps or written records describing such a plan have ever been discovered, leaving the original intention behind the network uncertain. Perhaps the most intriguing aspect of the complex and the one that continues to puzzle archaeologists and engineers alike, is the remarkable precision with which the volcanic tufa rock was excavated. Tufa is relatively soft compared to granite or basalt, which makes it easier to cut, but it also presents serious structural risks. If excavated improperly, the rock can crumble, fracture, or collapse under its own weight. Yet throughout the Orvieto underground network, the walls are often strikingly smooth and straight. The ceilings are shaped into stable vaults, and many of the corridors maintain consistent dimensions over considerable distances. These characteristics suggest that the ancient builders possessed a deep understanding of how to carve into this particular type of rock while maintaining structural stability. In numerous tunnels, the surfaces appear carefully leveled and shaped, indicating that the workers were able to control their cutting tools with notable precision even in confined, poorly lit underground conditions. This raises an important technological mystery. The early Etruscan builders responsible for many of the first excavations lived long before the development of advanced metal tools, commonly associated with later engineering feats. Archaeological evidence suggests that their primary instruments were simple iron or bronze tools, such as chisels, picks, and hammers. With such equipment, creating small cavities in rock would have been possible, but carving an enormous network of chambers and corridors with consistently flat walls and stable arches would have required extraordinary skill and planning. The builders would have needed to calculate how much rock could be safely removed, determine how to shape ceilings to distribute weight, and ensure that the surrounding stone would not collapse as the excavation progressed. Even today, engineers studying the tunnels sometimes struggle to explain how such accuracy could have been maintained without modern measuring instruments, advanced lighting, or structural analysis techniques. Another remarkable feature connected to this precision carving is the system of vertical wells that penetrate deep through the rock. Some of these shafts descend dozens of meters, linking the surface city with subterranean chambers far below. One of the most famous examples is Pozzo di San Patrizio, a spectacular Renaissance-era well whose double spiral staircase allows people and animals to descend and ascend simultaneously without crossing paths. Although this well was constructed centuries after the earliest Etruscan excavations, it was built in a location where earlier water shafts already existed, suggesting that the original underground water infrastructure may have influenced later engineering decisions. The precision required to dig such deep vertical wells through solid volcanic rock, while maintaining straight walls and stable structures, further emphasizes the remarkable skill of the builders who worked beneath the city. In other sections of the underground network, archaeologists discovered a peculiar architectural feature: hundreds of small niches carved into the rock walls. These cavities once served as nesting spaces for pigeons, forming what are essentially ancient underground dovecotes. The presence of these installations indicates that the subterranean spaces were not merely emergency shelters, but were integrated into the everyday economic life of the city. Pigeons were raised for both food and fertilizer, and the controlled environment of the underground chambers provided a safe breeding space. Yet this discovery introduces another technical question. Maintaining a large population of birds underground would have required a reliable supply of fresh air and natural light. Evidence suggests that the builders created ventilation shafts and narrow openings leading up to the surface, allowing air circulation to occur naturally through differences in temperature and pressure. Some researchers believe that the positioning of tunnels and shafts may have been intentionally aligned with prevailing winds, creating a primitive yet effective passive ventilation system. The more archaeologists map the underground complex, the more it begins to resemble an entire hidden city layered beneath the visible one above. During medieval conflicts and sieges, residents could retreat underground to access water, store supplies, and move discreetly through protected passageways. Some tunnels may even have served as escape routes leading beyond the city walls. Over centuries, successive generations expanded the network, modifying earlier spaces and adapting them to new uses. Despite these alterations, many of the original Etruscan excavations remain recognizable today, still preserving the distinctive precision with which the rock was carved. What continues to fascinate scholars is the possibility that the earliest builders may have possessed a far more advanced understanding of underground construction than previously believed. The ability to carve vast amounts of volcanic rock while maintaining structural stability, ventilation, and access to water suggests a combination of technical knowledge, careful planning, and practical engineering experience. However, because no written records from the Etruscans have survived, modern researchers must rely only on the physical traces left in the stone, the tunnel walls, the chiseled surfaces, and the carefully shaped vaults. Today, the Orvieto underground complex is considered one of the most remarkable underground archaeological landscapes in Europe. Beneath the city of Orvieto lies an ancient labyrinth that reveals how past civilizations adapted to geology, water management, and defense. Even after years of research, many mysteries remain, especially the astonishing precision with which the earliest tunnels were carved into volcanic tufa rock. The smooth walls and stable vaults in these dark passages still remind us that the technological abilities of ancient builders may have been far more sophisticated than we fully understand today. Beneath the quiet landscape of central Cappadocia, hidden under layers of volcanic rock, lies one of the most astonishing archaeological structures ever discovered: Derinkuyu underground city. At first glance, the land above appears ordinary: rolling hills, carved rock dwellings, and ancient valleys shaped by erosion. But far below the surface, carved deep into the soft volcanic tuff, stretches a vast subterranean complex that descends nearly 85 meters underground. This underground city is not a simple shelter or a collection of caves. It is an enormous, carefully engineered settlement composed of more than 18 levels of tunnels, chambers, stairways, storage rooms, and communal spaces. Archaeologists believe that at its peak, the city may have been capable of sheltering 20,000 people or more, along with livestock, food reserves, and supplies necessary for long-term survival beneath the earth. The existence of such a complex immediately raises questions about the technological knowledge, organization, and planning abilities of the people who created it, because constructing a multi-layered underground city of this scale requires remarkable understanding of geology, ventilation, structural stability, and spatial design. One of the most impressive aspects of Derinkuyu is its sophisticated system of ventilation. Deep vertical shafts cut through the rock connect the lower levels to the surface, allowing fresh air to circulate throughout the city. The largest of these shafts reaches more than 50 meters in depth and functions as the central ventilation channel for the entire structure. From it branch dozens of smaller air passages that distribute airflow across different chambers and corridors. Even at the deepest levels, the temperature remains relatively stable, usually around 13 to 15 degrees Celsius, creating an environment where large groups of people could survive for extended periods of time. Modern engineers studying the site have often expressed admiration for the effectiveness of this natural ventilation system. Considering that the builders likely worked with simple tools and limited technology, the accuracy with which they positioned these shafts suggests careful planning rather than random excavation. Without proper airflow, an underground city of this scale would quickly become uninhabitable. Yet Derinkuyu demonstrates that its creators understood how to manage air circulation in a confined subterranean environment with remarkable precision. Equally striking is the defensive design embedded within the tunnels. Throughout the narrow corridors are massive circular stone doors carved from solid rock. Each of these doors weighs hundreds of kilograms and could be rolled into place from inside the passageways to seal off entire sections of the city. The tunnels themselves are intentionally narrow and winding, forcing anyone entering from outside to move slowly and in single file. In the event of invasion, residents could block the passages with these heavy stone discs, effectively turning the underground network into a series of fortified compartments. Some of the doors contain small holes at their centers, possibly used for communication or for defending the passage from attackers attempting to break through. This defensive architecture indicates that Derinkuyu was not merely a place of everyday living, but also a carefully designed refuge intended to protect its inhabitants during times of conflict or danger. The sheer amount of rock that had to be excavated to create Derinkuyu presents another remarkable puzzle. The city was carved directly into volcanic tuff, a relatively soft but still solid rock that requires enormous labor to remove. To create multiple levels of chambers, tunnels, wells, and storage rooms, the builders would have had to remove hundreds of thousands, perhaps even millions, of tons of stone. Even more impressive is the structural stability of the complex. Despite its depth and scale, large sections of the city remain intact today, indicating that the builders understood how to distribute weight and prevent collapses. Ceilings were shaped in ways that allowed the rock to support itself, and walls were carved with careful attention to structural strength. Such engineering suggests not only patience and manpower, but also accumulated knowledge about how the rock behaved under pressure. Creating a stable underground city is not simply a matter of digging downward. It requires careful planning so that each chamber supports the integrity of the entire system. Derinkuyu was also not an isolated structure. Evidence suggests that it formed part of a wider network of underground settlements scattered across Cappadocia. Long subterranean tunnels connect Derinkuyu to other underground complexes, including the nearby Kaymakli underground city, located several kilometers away. These tunnels may have allowed inhabitants to travel between cities without ever emerging onto the surface, especially during times of invasion or political instability. The idea that multiple underground cities might have been interconnected hints at a broader strategy of regional defense and survival. Rather than a single hidden refuge, Cappadocia may once have contained an entire underground civilization capable of protecting large populations during prolonged threats. Yet perhaps the most profound mystery surrounding Derinkuyu concerns the identity of its earliest builders. Archaeologists have proposed several theories, but none have been definitively proven. Some scholars believe the first stages of the city may have been carved by the ancient Phrygians, a civilization that flourished in Anatolia around the 8th century BCE. According to this theory, the Phrygians may have begun excavating simple underground chambers that later civilizations expanded and transformed into the complex structure visible today. Others suggest that the city was significantly enlarged during the Byzantine period, when Christian communities in the region faced repeated invasions and may have relied on underground refugees for protection. Byzantine sources describe people hiding in subterranean settlements during times of conflict, which lends some support to this interpretation. However, the deeper layers of Derinkuyu appear older than many of the Byzantine modifications, suggesting that the origins of the city might extend even further back in time. This uncertainty about the original builders is what makes Derinkuyu particularly fascinating. Unlike many ancient monuments whose creators are clearly known, the earliest phase of this underground city remains hidden in the shadows of history. The deeper chambers reveal architectural features that differ slightly from the upper levels, hinting that the complex evolved gradually over centuries as different cultures expanded and modified it. Each generation may have added new rooms, widened tunnels, or deepened existing shafts. Over time, what may have started as a modest underground shelter could have transformed into a sprawling subterranean metropolis. Because the earliest layers are difficult to date precisely, the true origin of the city remains open to interpretation. Some archaeologists believe that earlier civilizations in the region, perhaps even those predating the Phrygians, may have begun the excavation, passing the knowledge of underground construction down through generations. Another layer of mystery lies in how the city was ultimately forgotten. For centuries, Derinkuyu remained hidden beneath the ground, unknown even to many of the people living directly above it. Its rediscovery in the 20th century occurred almost by accident, when a local resident renovating his house discovered a hidden opening behind a wall in his basement. That opening led to a passageway descending into darkness, and further exploration revealed an immense labyrinth of chambers stretching deep beneath the town. What had once been a thriving refuge capable of sheltering thousands had vanished from historical memory, preserved only by the silence of stone. Today, Derinkuyu Underground City remains one of the most remarkable examples of ancient engineering ever discovered. It reveals a surprising mastery of ventilation, structural stability, and defensive design deep beneath Cappadocia. Yet the identity of the people who first built and expanded this vast underground world is still unknown. That mystery may be its most fascinating feature, reminding us that even in places studied for decades, important chapters of human history may still lie hidden beneath the ground. Who do you think were the true original builders of Derinkuyu Underground City? And how were they able to create such a vast structure deep beneath the earth? Share your thoughts in the comments below.